It must be one of the most amazing flying stories of all time. One that is still hard to believe. An airliner full of passengers out of control at 17,000 feet. And the pilot is stuck outside the plane. In the cockpit, 3 frightened flight attendants are clinging to his legs. If he slips from their grasp, the captain's body could be sucked into the engine and bring down the plane. At the controls, a young co-pilot is battling to get the plane to the nearest airport.
Mayday! 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 London, this is Sweden 5390!
The lives of 87 passengers and crew hang by a thread.
A lot of people go through life thinking it'll never happen to me. But you tend to go through life thinking it can.
I said I thought I was going to die, Mother. I thought I was going to die.
This bizarre accident tested the limits of human survival. And the investigation that followed not only exposed the mistakes behind it, but led to new ways of preventing them. For the crew of the British Airways flight from Birmingham, England to Malaga, Spain, the 10th of June began like any other day. Old friends about to do a job they loved.
Yeah, God, I can't remember that though.
Yeah, but I'm not doing it when I go.
Stewards Nigel Ogden and Simon Rogers, along with stewardess Sue Prince, had worked together on and off for years.
Anyway.
They're an experienced, capable team that takes pride in its work.
At Birmingham, all the cabin crew and all the pilots, they all knew each other. We're all on first-name terms. Simon was a good friend of mine anyway, because we, you know, just go out for a beer or a curry or whatever like that. Everybody was friendly to everybody else.
The one new member of the group was Alistair Atchison, an experienced co-pilot he'd just driven down from Manchester that morning.
Morning, Alistair. Come on in.
Tim Lancaster is captain. He's been a commercial pilot for 21 years.
Well, we've better get started, eh?
Chief Steward John Heward arrives to give the crew their final briefing.
Morning, everyone. Right. Is that the first officer?
Yeah, just down from Manchester.
Nice to see a new face. OK. Malaga. Right, looking forward to this. Right, Nige, you can sit up with me up front and talk rugby. Sue, where would you like?
Over the wing?
OK, so, Simon, you're at the rear. All right, now, just a few safety questions. Nigel.
Before takeoff, the co-pilot performs a walk-around, checking the outside of the aircraft for anything wrong. In the cockpit, Captain Tim Lancaster reviews a log of the maintenance carried out on the plane the day before.
Everything okay? Fine. She's just come out of maintenance by the look of it. Hardly much though. Just changed the windscreen.
Many of the passengers know the flight well and are looking forward to a relaxed trip to Spain.
I was going to catch a plane from Birmingham to Malaga to meet my mum. My sister and I were joining her there for a week's holiday, a girls' week.
I live in the south of Spain, and 2 or 3 times a year I come back to see my grandchildren and also my mother. Everyone lives near Birmingham, so that's the route I normally take, Malaga, Birmingham.
These unsuspecting passengers and crew were about to begin an adventure of a lifetime.
Seem to have made yourself comfortable.
Too right.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking.
My name is Tim Lancaster. Welcome aboard this
British Airways flight to Malaga. Unfortunately,
He seemed laid back and quite jovial, really. You know, sort of a, well, it's a lovely day in Malaga, blue skies, sunshine. Sit back and enjoy the flight.
Sunny, and we still expect to get you there on time.
Birmingham Tower, Speedbird 5390. We're ready to start and push.
Speedbird 5390. Clear to start and push.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now going to take you through our
Safety procedures and equipment. As this information is for your benefit, we ask you to watch and listen carefully. Clear to start engines.
Starting number 2.
Emergency exits are on both sides.
The stewardess and shows you the emergency exit and all the emergency gear. And, of course, nobody's really watching. One chap was quite blasé, he was reading the Times, and people weren't really bothering because we've all been on flights and, you know, it's no big deal.
The air can be topped up by using the mouthpiece, and there is a whistle for attracting attention.
knots.
The BAC 111 was known as the Jeep of the skies, a workhorse that was easy to maintain and had a good safety record. At 43 tons, this pressurized hull is carrying 81 passengers and 6 crew, and is now climbing to 23,000 feet. In just over 2 hours, they should be in Spain. Only a catastrophic accident could bring this plane out of the skies.
Alistair, I can see my house from here.
2 minutes into the climb, the pilots switch on the autopilot. Tim Lancaster takes off his shoulder straps and relaxes into the flight.
Now I went into the flight deck to ask Tim and Alistair what they would like to drink.
You gentlemen like a tea?
Please, the usual.
Milk, 1 sugar, please.
And I said, your breakfast, Tom, it'll only be a few minutes.
Now, almost 13 minutes after takeoff, and at 17,300 feet, they're just 5,000 feet from their assigned altitude. But then, in a split second, everything changes. With a huge explosion, the captain's windscreen blows out into the sky. Almost immediately, a white fog forms.
A sort of really intense stomach, body-shaking thud.
We were just diving, really. And then we started to judder like this.
And I was a bit stunned. I thought, oh God, it's a bomb.
Alistair, the co-pilot, is suddenly fighting for control in a 350-mile-an-hour wind. There's no time to think about the captain, who's been blasted out of the window by pressurized air escaping from the aircraft. The rushing wind pins Captain Lancaster to the roof of the cockpit. Inside, his legs have jammed the control column forward, disconnecting the autopilot and pushing the plane down into a dive. Alistair Acheson needs all his flying experience now. He's on his own. The captain's body is pinned to the outside of the jet as it hurtles down from 17,000 feet. The throttles are jammed forward, increasing the speed to nearly 400 miles an hour. Co-pilot Alistair Acheson has to take command. While he fights to bring the plane under control, steward Nigel Ogden can see his captain is being sucked out of the aircraft.
And I looked in, the flight deck door was resting on the controls, and all I could see was Tim out the window. I jumped over, put one foot in the captain's footwell, and the other one was down the side of his seat. I just grabbed him before he went out completely.
Nigel Ogden holds on to the captain for dear life. Outside, a 390-mile-an-hour blast of wind at minus 17 degrees centigrade smashes into Tim Lancaster's body. The tornado in the cockpit is giving Acheson major problems. Air traffic control can hear his cries for help, But the storm rushing through the cockpit drowns out their replies. The captain's feet are still pushing against the control column, and Alistair is struggling to get full control of the plane. He's now diving through some of the busiest air lanes in the world, with the added danger of a mid-air collision. From the cabin, lead steward John Heward sees the chaos in the cockpit and does what he can to help.
I looked up, and there was Nigel sort of hanging across the seat in the flight deck. In front of me, the flight deck door had fallen forwards and trapped itself between the actual door frame and the throttles of the aircraft. So I literally stamped on it twice, and it literally broke into 3 or 4 pieces. Behind, on the wall of the flight deck, there is a spare seat for anybody to observe the flight or whatever. And I thought, well, if I put my arm through the seatbelt there, I can grab both of them, and at least we've got some sort of anchor point inside the aircraft.
Alistair, who's never flown with this crew before, has to leave them to their own devices and focus on getting the plane to safety. He now has control of the throttles. John and Nigel have wrenched the captain's feet away from the control column. But instead of slowing down, Acheson decides to continue the rapid descent. It will quickly take him out of the way of any other air traffic and take him to a lower altitude where oxygen equipment won't be needed. Staying too long at a high altitude risks oxygen starvation, and this older aircraft is not fully equipped with oxygen for all the passengers on board. The airspeed indicator goes into the red. In the cabin, the 2 other stewards, Sue Prince and Simon Rogers, are trying to prepare the passengers for what they hope will, at worst, be an emergency landing. They've dived to 11,000 feet in just 2.5 minutes. But as they level out and slow down to 170 miles per hour, the captain's body is no longer pinned to the roof and slides round to the side of the plane.
Flight level 100. Radar heading 195.
Working his way from the back of the cabin, steward Simon Rogers now catches sight of the chaos in the cockpit for the first time.
Now the aircraft had got to sort of flying fairly level, Simon came up from the back. Nigel was beginning to get really sort of achy now with his arms, and I knew he wasn't going to let go unless he was sure that Tim wouldn't fly out of the window.
We all had fear in our eyes. We were all worried sick because we thought, you know, either Tim's going to die or we're going to die, you know. That was going through my mind. But it was up to Alistair then, and it was up to us 3, Simon and John and myself, to hold on to grim death.
Mayday, mayday, mayday.
All I remember is Tim's arms flailing out. His arms seemed about 6 foot long. And I'll never forget that. His eyes were wide open. I mean, his face was hitting the side of the side screen, but he didn't blink. And I thought to myself, and I said to John, I said, I think he's dead. I think he's dead. And I said, you and Sil have to hold on. I can't hold on anymore. I can't hold on anymore. I've lost the feeling in my arms.
We decided to put Simon. I said to Simon, you sit in that jump seat and fasten yourself in. With Simon sitting in the seat, we'd freed Tim's legs from between the control column and the seat. So we hooked his feet over the back of the captain's seat, and then Simon literally put his hands on the top, just so he was holding his ankles down.
Hey, look, what's going on? We're gonna be all right. But I think the captain's dead.
Well, I couldn't believe it, because he just told us what a lovely day it was. You know, blue skies, sunshine, relax and enjoy the flight. And then next minute, he's dead.
Simon and Alistair now face one of their most difficult decisions: what to do with the lifeless body of the captain. No words are said, but for a moment the thought passes between them that the best thing would simply be to let it go.
No! Can you hold on to it, please?
But Alistair's order isn't simply an act of compassion.
Releasing the body at the position it was in, it would have gone close to the upper area of the wing. It could have damaged the leading edge of the wing. Had it gone over the wing, it could very well have gone into the engine. Quite a lot of damage could have been caused by the release of the body. So I think it was a very sensible decision to try and keep him where he was.
Alistair has managed to get down to 11,000 feet. Without the captain to help, he's operating the plane's systems from memory and shepherding it around Heathrow, some of the most congested airspace in the world. 7 minutes out of contact with the ground, he's able to hear the voice of air traffic control for the first time.
Requesting radar assistance onto the nearest airfield, please.
Speedbird 5390, roger. Can you accept landing at Southampton?
Speedbird 5390, I am familiar with Gatwick. Would appreciate Gatwick.
Alistair wants to land at Gatwick Airport, as he's flown there many times before. But Southampton is nearer, and even though he's never flown there before, he knows he has to get down fast.
And I am on 150 knots. Requesting radar assistance into Southampton.
When you're going to an airport that you're not used to, you normally have charts, let-down plates, that kind of thing that you can read up on and learn something of the airport you're going to. But he knew nothing of Southampton. He hadn't been there. He had no charts because everything had gone out the window. There was no let-down plates to look at the approach and so on.
All the maps and charts blew out of the window with the captain, and only the air traffic controller can guide Acheson. He turns towards Southampton.
Southampton, this is Speedbird 5390. Do you read?
Speedbird 5390. Good morning. Identified on handover from London radar 6 miles west of Southampton Airfield. What is your passing level?
Roger, sir. I am not familiar with Southampton. Request you shepherd me onto the runway.
When he spoke, he was obviously stressed. It sounded as if he was under a fair bit of pressure.
What is your number of persons on board?
We have 84 passengers on board, and I think that will be all until we are on the ground.
Roger, that's copied. I've been advised it's pressurisation failure. Is that the only problem?
Negative. The captain is half out of the aeroplane, I understand. I believe he's dead.
Roger, that is copied.
My feeling was, when he told me what was going on, it was one of disbelief, because it doesn't actually happen. You know, it's one of these things that you see in films, that happens in films, but it doesn't happen in real life. And it was sort of the hairs in the back of the neck go up, and there's this feeling down the spine, the tingle down the spine, and you think, no, it's not for real, but it's got to be.
Flight attendant holding on to him, but requesting emergency facility for the captain. I think he is dead.
Affirm. What is your passing level?
Leaving flight level 5,500 feet on 1019.
Roger, that's copied. I'll give you a little bit more space, then I'll turn you on to a heading of 180. Yeah, it's a full emergency. It's a 111.
Rundle contacts the emergency services at the first opportunity.
I don't know how many people are on board, but I'll let you know.
Could you confirm that the length of runway at Southampton is acceptable for a 111?
Yes, it is acceptable for a 111, and I'll give you the figures shortly.
As long as we have at least 2,500 metres, I am happy.
I'm afraid we don't have 2,500 metres. Neither do Bournemouth. We have a maximum of 1,800 metres.
Acheson is concerned that the plane is above its maximum landing weight, being full of fuel for the journey to Malaga. And the BAC 111 can't dump fuel. If the runway isn't long enough, he faces more problems.
Whether the aircraft could actually stop on the runway, or whether the tyres would burst, or whether he would go off the end of the runway. That's obviously what he was worried about when asking for 2,200 metres.
5390. Thank you very much. We are 3 greens and flaps 45. So we are set for approach, but make it please very gentle.
Yes, I will indeed. You are number 1 traffic.
If you think about it, all the airline pilot training is done with 2 pilots, both compass mentors in the cockpit, one flying the aeroplane and the other one doing all the emergency drills. So what you actually had was the captain hanging out the window, at least one person hanging onto his legs, and Alistair flying the aeroplane with nobody else to talk to.
Speedbird of 5390 is 9 miles from touchdown. You're clear to land. Wind indicates 020 degrees at 14 knots. Descend to height to 1500 feet. QFE is 1017.
Roger, sir. Descending to 1,500 feet. Talk me down all the way. I need all the help I can get.
Roger, you'll be able to stop the aircraft on the runway and evacuate the aircraft on the runway.
He must have been about 6 or 7 miles from touchdown. And obviously at that point I kept talking until he was happy he could see the runway and was happy to continue looking out the window and land the aeroplane. At the point he said he was visual with the runway, I effectively stopped talking.
Not acknowledge unless requested. It will be an uninterrupted talk down, but feel free to interrupt if you feel you need to.
5390. Thank you very much. I have the runway in sight.
Thank you. You are clear to land. Do you wish me to continue with any further information?
Negative.
"32 minutes after takeoff, with 81 terrified passengers, a nearly full fuel tank, and the captain blasted out of the window, Alistair Acheson attempts the most difficult landing of his career. At 8:55 a.m., flight BA 5390 makes a perfect landing at Southampton Airport. Immediately, emergency vehicles surround the plane. Firefighters remove the body of the captain and lead the passengers and crew away.
I remember seeing the co-pilot, the man who really, if it wasn't for him, we'd have been on the other side by now, and is walking down the runway very slowly, shaking his head, and he got an ambulance man walking with him with his arm around the shoulders of the co-pilot. And the co-pilot was shaking his head as if... I remember that distinctly. I don't know why, but I do.
Alistair Acheson has carried out a remarkable piece of flying, almost unprecedented in aviation history. He has had to pilot his plane without his captain, who has undergone physical stresses that nobody could have been expected to survive.
I think these extreme conditions, no one expects to occur in their lifetime. His survival time must have been measured in no more than tens of minutes as he became colder and colder and his body systems began to shut down.
Tim Lancaster's body was subjected to a two-pronged assault. The physical violence that his body suffered being blown out of the plane, and the extreme cold and lack of oxygen at 17,000 feet. Every 1,000 feet of altitude causes the temperature to drop by 2 degrees centigrade. So the temperature on the outside of the plane would have been around minus 17 degrees centigrade. The extreme wind chill also meant his body was losing heat very rapidly.
He would have lapsed into semi-consciousness and then unconsciousness, and as the temperature, his core body temperature fell, he would have finally died as a result of the excessive cold in that environment.
Despite the trauma that Captain Lancaster's body suffered, there was one final twist to his story.
You know, it's only once I've ever been here, and that was 10 years ago, 15 years ago.
In the Oxfordshire countryside, John Heward and Nigel Ogden are visiting one of their crew members who shared their horrific experiences.
Here he is.
Hi, guys. John, how are you? Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, mate.
Nige. Come in, come in. Hi.
Like on SCP, when you go in, you've got to pretend...
The captain of that fateful flight, Tim Lancaster, somehow survived his horrific ordeal. There were no fatalities on BA 5390.
Yeah, that's it now. You can go on the 3-day cruise across there.
As his frozen, lifeless body was removed from the plane, nobody thought that Tim could have survived such punishment. But remarkably, he was slowly beginning to emerge from his horrific adventure.
Tim, can you hear me?
I regained some consciousness on the ground at Southampton because I remember big red and white things, which were obviously fire engines and ambulances, not people and not conversation. And then my next clear, lucid thoughts were in hospital in Southampton. Over the next few days, all the bits eventually arrived back in my sort of consciousness, and I put the jigsaw together and, you know, sort of played the whole story for myself and understood what had happened. There was a big bang, a noise of all the air escaping, but I remember watching the windscreen move away from the aircraft, and then it had gone like a bullet. It disappeared into the distance. And I think there was an even bigger bang, or there was an even bigger bang. And I was very conscious of going upwards. And, well, the whole thing became completely surreal then, as it would. And I was aware of being outside of the airplane, but that really didn't bother me a great deal. What I remember most clearly is the fact I couldn't breathe because I was facing into the airflow. And I turned it round and actually turned my body round. I was sort of looking back along the top of the aircraft at that stage, and I could breathe then. And yes, I remember that. I can remember seeing the tail of the aircraft. I can remember the engines going round, and then I don't remember much more. Memory stopped at that point.
I went down there last year,
Yeah.
but they've changed the airport totally now.
I'm glad I did hold on, because Tim was alive. I mean, he's a very strong man. He must have been. To survive that, I wouldn't have been able to survive it.
That's all very dramatic.
It is, look.
Tim Lancaster's survival was little short of miraculous. He'd been minutes away from death. It was Alistair Acheson's flying that saved his life. His quick thinking in getting the plane to the ground in only 22 minutes saved Lancaster from dying from the effects of exposure. And by pure chance, the physical trauma he suffered was limited. It included a bone fracture in his right arm and wrist, a broken left thumb, bruising, frostbite and shock. Remarkably, within 5 months, Tim Lancaster had made a full recovery and was flying again.
Speedbird 539.
Of course, the captain wasn't the only one to go through a horrific experience. Battling with the controls whilst a tornado raged through the cockpit was something no commercial pilot could be trained for.
If it goes comfortable at all, just let me know.
The few pilots who are able to understand the experience of Acheson and his crew include these young Royal Air Force trainees.
Pilots of Shapley, seat 7. Pilots of Bolton, seat 3.
They are being put through a simulation of an explosive decompression in this hyperbaric chamber. It duplicates the effects of a window blowing out at 25,000 feet.
Individual intercoms.
Checked and operated.
All connections.
Checked and firm.
Console checks are complete. Clear to claim instruction of the medical officer.
Climbing to 8,000 feet at 4,000 feet per minute.
The atmospheric pressure is initially set to 8,000 feet. This is the pressure inside the sealed cabin of most commercial aircraft. Anyone can survive this for many hours with no ill effects. Any higher than that, and the experience is very different.
Is enabled.
Students, listen in. Will all students please indicate with a clear thumbs up that they are ready for rapid decompression? 8 thumbs, rest your thumbs. Students, stand by for rapid decompression. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, now.
The mist in the hyperbaric chamber is identical to the fog formed when the window blew out on BA 5390. At the instant of rapid decompression, the air in the cabin can no longer hold onto its water vapor, which is then released into the atmosphere as fog.
Chamber altitude is stable at 25,000 feet. High hold is enabled. Cross vent is on and you're clear to commence hypoxia training.
Good, well done. Good, we'll commence hypoxia training on students 7 and 8. Confirm 7 and 8.
Once the fog clears, then the lack of oxygen at that height begins to tell.
Okay, let's put you out your misery. Start copying these shapes in the right-hand bar, Jim.
Without oxygen, at first we begin to see a reduction in their reaction speed, and we see personality changes, much like someone experiences when intoxicated with alcohol. So we see that some students become euphoric, some students become quite subdued, and some students begin to develop forgetfulness.
Have a look at the ugliness of your colleagues' faces, see if they get any prettier whilst you're becoming hypoxic, and carry on with the
We see increasingly impaired performance in our students. Thinking is slowed and their reaction speed becomes increasingly slowed until they begin to develop sort of lapses of concentration, falling into unconsciousness, and finally death if their oxygen supply is not re-established.
Indicating that the blood is no longer carrying as much oxygen as it was. This is all about you experiencing your personal symptoms and having others observe the symptoms in you.
Flying alone, battling nearly 400-mile-an-hour winds, and defeating the possibility of oxygen deprivation, Alistair Acheson's achievement in saving Flight 5390 was outstanding. Even as the crisis was unfolding, accident investigators were rushing to Southampton to find an explanation. On the ground at Southampton Airport, the search for clues begins. Initial investigation shows no distortion to the frame of the windscreen, so this rules out a problem with the structure. The fact that there are no shards of glass also discounts a bird strike. Stuart Culling, senior investigator with the Air Accident Investigation Branch, has little to go on.
Windscreen was missing, there was a certain amount of blood around, there were some minor dents and scrapes on the fuselage, as you'd expect if the window had gone past, and really that was about it, apart from a lot of paper scattered around inside.
One of his first clues comes from the log recovered from the plane. He knows the plane had been serviced just the day before, and that a windscreen had been replaced. He immediately pays a visit to the British Airways maintenance hangar at Birmingham.
I wanted to find out exactly what had happened to the aircraft before it took off. and I'd arranged that I should talk to the shift maintenance manager who fitted the window. There was a slight problem there because he'd been on night duty, and consequently he had finished his shift at roughly the same time as the windscreen came out of the aircraft, and he wasn't in a fit state to be interviewed. He needed to get some sleep.
Stuart Culling.
Good morning. Nice to see you. I was expecting you.
Yes, good. Thank you very much. Is this the hangar in question?
This is the main hangar, yes.
Yes.
So in the meantime, I looked around the facility. I made sure that any paperwork and any records of the aircraft had been identified and taken away so they couldn't be accessed by anyone else, and waited until he came in.
Hello, I'm from the AIIB. Yes, and this is my colleague. What I'd like to do today is just find out what went on during that shift pattern and how it went. Thank you very much. Did you notice anything about the window itself, any stress marks that were worrying you?
My first conversation with the shift maintenance manager was relatively general, because at that stage we had no evidence that was relevant.
Yourself, you didn't delegate it to somebody else and then check
Stuart,
it?
there's a phone call for you. Just come in.
Oh, right. Would you mind if I took this and come back?
So I took the call and found that it was information about the windscreen which had been found near Didcot, and there were something like 30 bolts found with it, most of which were one size short in diameter, one size too small in diameter.
It was a crucial error. On some planes, windscreens are fitted from the inside and use the internal pressure inside the cabin to keep them in place. But on the 111, the windscreen is bolted on from the outside. Any weakness in the bolts could mean that the pressure inside the plane would blow the windscreen out. It appears Culling has very quickly found the mistake and the guilty man.
I've had some news which I think is very relevant. I've heard from my colleagues who are working on the bolts. They tell me they're the wrong bolts. They're the wrong diameter.
No, that's not possible. They're exactly the same bolts that I took out of there.
He's a professional man. He's very keen on doing things, to his mind, in the interest of the company. And he's suddenly told that he's put a windscreen in using bolts of the wrong size. And he's absolutely shocked.
I can show you. I'll show you the bolts I got out of there.
One thing that came out was that he said, oh, the old bolts went into a waste bin in the hangar where he did the job, and they may still be there. So we rushed across to the waste bin and found something like 80 discarded bolts.
Here. They'll be in here. This is where I put them. These are the bolts.
And these are the ones you checked against the new ones?
That's right, yeah. I took
from the carousel.
It was really excellent evidence. Gold, as far as I was concerned.
Well, I'll take these away.
Okay.
By comparing the maintenance manual to what the engineer had told him, Culling is quickly able to identify the first part of the sequence, what went wrong the previous night when the window of the BAC 111 had been replaced.
We went through the whole chain of events that had occurred, and we found that there were something like 13 different anomalies which led to the fitting of the bolts. And had any of these caused him to think, the sequence of events would not have continued and there wouldn't have been an accident.
The engineer had come early into his shift, and at about 4 a.m. had gone to work removing the old windscreen from the plane. The hangar was full, and the plane had been pushed against the hangar door, which made the windscreen hard to reach. Stretched across the fuselage, he had problems controlling his screwdriver. The windscreen that he had taken out had itself been fitted with the wrong length bolts, but they were still strong enough to hold the screen in, and it survived without a hitch for 4 years. But he was a conscientious engineer, and he decided that he would replace the old bolts with new ones when he installed the new screen. He chose not to go to the parts catalogue and look up the exact bolts he needed. Instead, he went straight to the parts store.
Good morning.
Morning.
There, he matched by eye new bolts with the ones he had taken out of the screen. His eye match was good, and he found a few fresh bolts of exactly the same type in a drawer.
What I'm after is I need 97 Ds. I'm just doing a windscreen on a 111 over there, and I need some new bolts.
8 Ds on a 111?
Well, no, these are 7s. This is a 7. I've just taken it out.
We haven't got any 7s anyway.
OK. Right,
The store manager knew which bolts the engineer should have been looking for, but the engineer chose to ignore his advice. Instead, he drove to the other side of the airport to find a match for his bolts. It was now about 5:15 a.m., and in a dark corner of the hangar, he continued to search for new bolts identical to the ones he'd taken out of the plane. But in the gloom, his luck finally ran out. He thought they matched, but they didn't. He picked bolts that were just over 0.02 of an inch too narrow for the job. Returning to the 111, he stretched over the plane and began fitting these new bolts. Working at an angle, he couldn't see that the new bolts didn't fit correctly. Signing off at 6 a.m., the engineer had managed to get his work done in time. The plane was now ready to be handed over to Captain Lancaster and his crew. In fact, it was a disaster waiting to happen. The morning of the next day, the 111 was at 17,300 feet. The difference in pressure between the sealed hull of the jet and the thin atmosphere was climbing quickly to the half-ton per square foot it would reach at 35,000 feet. This pressure was looking for a weakness, and it found it. For Culling, finding out what had happened that night is only the first step. No one had hidden from him what they'd done, but he knows that he has to go deeper to understand the reasons behind this horrific sequence of events, why the engineer did what he did, and whether this was an isolated incident or the symptom of a bigger problem.
Accident investigation, certainly on aircraft, comprises 2 parts. The first part is what's happened, and that's usually relatively the easy bit. The second part is why did it happen?
Why did the engineer ignore procedure, bypass the technical manuals, and ignore helpful advice? Culling's search for the answers was in its own way revolutionary.
If we talk to people without giving them a warning, we felt we'd get more information because they'd be freer to discuss it. If we gave them a formal caution, as it were, we thought that they would dry up.
Coffee?
Yes, please.
Great. How was the journey in?
Oh, well, usual stuff.
They decide to talk to the engineer well away from the hangar in a cozy hotel room.
Well, thanks for coming in.
To gain insight into the methods of the maintenance engineers, Culling then does something no one had done before. He brings in a behavioral psychologist.
So, is the aircraft normally in the hangar when you're doing that?
Psychologists had been used before to analyze why pilots make mistakes under pressure. It's a discipline called human factors. But in 1990, using human factors in engineering was unheard of.
I wanted a professional slant on what is really psychological territory. I would hope that as far as the shift maintenance manager was concerned, that it gave him extra confidence that we were trying to be even-handed and that we were trying to get to the bottom of it.
You know, the parts catalogue. When you're getting the bolts out, do you go straight to the parts catalogue, or do you just sort of...
Not usually.
Right.
No, if I've got a set of screws and there's the same screws, I just go get them out of the carousels.
Right. You find it's easier to do it visually? It was, in that case, easier to do it visually from the bolts you take now?
Yeah, because they're the same bolts that come out, the same ones go back in, so same size bolts, there's no difference.
And if it worked before, it must be the right bolts?
Yeah, it's just replacing like with like, really.
Yeah, because it had been flying.
We were somewhat horrified that they had admitted those things to us, because after all, we were officially, in inverted commas, and they were quite proud of them. We would have thought that had they used such practices, they would have kept very quiet about it.
If I'd had to go check with the computers what bolts I needed and what parts and how to fit the thing, then there was a good chance it wouldn't have been flying at the time it was meant to be.
Good, good. So, when you're doing the job now, you're an experienced engineer, it might not be by the book all the time, like you would train somebody who was new.
No, not usually. We've been doing these things for years.
Culling was stunned by what he was hearing, but there were more revelations to come. The engineer's dangerous approach was becoming clearer by the minute.
You trusted your own knowledge better than the store supervisor's knowledge?
Well, I'm an engineer. I got 7D bolts out, so I put 7D bolts back in. That's, well, you know, no problem with that. It's that simple.
So you trusted that the aircraft had been flying, so therefore they must have been the right bolts?
Yeah, that aircraft had done lots of hours with that windscreen.
Their whole aim was to expedite work through their station. They had a lot of work coming. It was all done at night, and in many cases they had more work than they could reasonably handle. And they had devised little stratagems to get round that.
Culling and the psychologist's insights made their way into the first draft of the report. It said that there were systemic faults in the maintenance procedure in Birmingham. But under pressure from British Airways lawyers, and because they hadn't carried out their investigation following normal procedure, the final report was forced to change its emphasis.
Hour by hour, I mean the Treasury solicitor or whoever was advising the branch confirmed that under natural law it was unfair to use that information because we hadn't gone through the whole procedure. And so we had to remove that from the report.
The investigators had never produced an accident report like it. Working with the psychologist, Culling developed a completely novel way of using human factors to explain why this accident happened. They uncovered pressures in the hangar that caused an otherwise proficient engineer to make potentially lethal mistakes whilst being certain he was doing the right thing. This psychological approach took air accident prevention to a new level. Through the sheer skill of the crew of BA 5390, as well as a small measure of luck, 87 people are now still alive. As a consequence of this investigation, others may never have to go through the same ordeal. In the aftermath of the accident, the crew were treated as heroes. They received numerous awards, and Alistair Acheson received the coveted gold medal for airmanship. Their colleagues also showed what they felt.
One of the most moving things was to go back to Birmingham. As we walked into the airport, the whole of the airport stopped. And all the ground staff and all the check-in girls and all that just stood and applauded as we walked through the building, and it was really quite, you know, moving at the time. You sort of wanted to get out of the way so that you could sort of, you know, I don't really want to do this. It's like walking up the red carpet sort of thing.
Their colleagues were applauding a team which had demonstrated the highest form of professionalism at every level. A cabin crew which worked as a team in extraordinary circumstances, and the co-pilot, an outsider who took control and worked alone to bring them all safely down to earth. Each of the crew dealt with their experience in different ways. Tim Lancaster began flying again with BA just 5 months after the accident. He's retired from BA, but loves flying so much he's now with another airline.
You cannot say that, she'll shoot you.
It was a special day when the first day I flew. I decided, you know, that was what I was going to do. I was going to make an effort to go back to work and get better. So having made the decision, the rest was easy.
For Nigel, the man who ran to Tim's aid and held on to him for dear life, the impact of that day was far more profound.
I think about it every day. And that is the truth. I think about it every single day. In one form or another, yeah. Every single day. it'll affect me till the end of my days.
Nigel, along with Simon and Sue, no longer fly. But John Heward is still with British Airways as a chief steward. But even he isn't free of the memories of that day.
They were bringing in another British Aerospace aeroplane to where I worked in Birmingham, and unfortunately that window was fitted from the outside, and the layout of the cabin was identical. And when I sat on it, it all came back to you. But for that reason, I've gone back to work at Heathrow and fly long-haul flights again, because those aeroplanes have got no resemblance to the 111 at all.
Alistair Acheson, who is still flying for British Airways, chose not to take part in this film. For each of the crew, the experience will stay with them in different ways. But common to them all is that on that day, their numbers did not come up.
Tim explained it very well, actually. And he said our names were on the page, but we weren't at the top. And I think that was, you know, probably true.
FedEx Flight 705.
Positive rate. Gear up, please.
A routine trip from Memphis, Tennessee to San Jose, California. Little do the crew know they will soon have to defend themselves against a determined attack intended to kill them all. Flight 705 will never reach its destination.
We've had an attempt to take over.
Investigators will uncover a meticulous plan and a desperate motive.
We're not getting any oxygen. We have the terrain alarm. Aero Peru 603. We are in an emergency.
It's April 1994. A FedEx cargo plane is on its way to California. It's a perfect day for flying.
Altimeters? 9s and 2s here.
But behind the cockpit, in the galley area, a disaster is about to unfold. The pilots of FedEx Flight 705 are seconds away from an unprecedented situation.
God almighty.
Center emergency.
He's had an attempted takeover.
We need an ambulance, and we need armed intervention.
Let me up,
April the 7th, 1994. Worldwide headquarters of Federal Express in Memphis, Tennessee. Servicing 171 countries, the company delivers over 2 million packages per day and works to a tight schedule. Flying conditions are perfect at the Memphis airport. FedEx Flight 705 to San Jose, California is preparing to depart with a 3-man crew.
Has the afternoon flight to San Jose got any jump seaters on it? None at all?
42-year-old Auburn Calloway is a flight engineer. He hopes to hitch a ride on Flight 705 for pressing personal reasons.
Thanks.
Employees have the privilege of free rides. They're known as jump seaters. 39-year-old flight engineer Andy Peterson is the first of the flight crew to arrive on the plane.
Andy Peterson, Auburn Calloway.
He's surprised to find Auburn Calloway on board.
My first thought was, well, scheduling has gotten, it's also called someone else out for the flight. And now we've got 2 engineers, so I said hey to him and then asked him if he was going to be riding out to San Jose with us, and he said he was, that he was going to ride the jump seat out.
Peterson, a 5-year flyer with FedEx, finds something unusual during his pre-flight check. The breaker switch of the cockpit voice recorder, or CVR, is in the off position. Puzzled, Peterson resets it. The CVR records all in-flight voice communications. It's a crucial tool for investigating air disasters. No large commercial airliner is allowed to fly without one.
The cockpit voice circuit breaker, it had popped out, which meaning the power's off to the cockpit voice recorder. So I'd never seen that before, and I thought, well, that's kind of weird.
49-year-old pilot David Sanders and 42-year-old co-pilot James Tucker are next to board and prepare for departure.
You mind if I hop around with you guys, California?
No, not at all. I don't see any problems today. Everything looks good.
You play the guitar?
I play at it.
He was very cool, calm, collected, nothing indicating anything was amiss. Actually, noticing there was a guitar case off to the right in front of the 9G net. But I couldn't wait to get in the cockpit and start going through cockpit checks because we had a lot to do.
But something was amiss. They didn't know it, but Callaway had originally been scheduled to be the flight engineer on this flight. However, he and his crew had exceeded their flying hours by just 1 minute the previous day, so they'd been replaced. But Callaway was determined to make Flight 705 no matter what.
I think she'll fly.
All the nuts and bolts are in?
Yeah.
When I came back out on the airplane and went back up to the cockpit, I noticed that circuit breaker had popped out again. So I reset it and decided that I would see if it would stay in. Instead of calling maintenance at that time, that I'd just wait and see if it popped back out, that I would call maintenance, because that is a no-go item.
If the CVR is turned off, there will be no audio record of the events aboard Flight 705.
You want to fly this leg of the trip, or do you prefer the return trip?
You never know when you're going to get another chance.
I met Jim Tucker that afternoon. Jim had been with the company for 10 years. In fact, he was an instructor in the DC-10. Andy Peterson and I had had a trip together. In fact, we flew to Paris one time.
The crew is flying together for the first time. Both Tucker and Sanders are ex-Navy. Sanders has been with FedEx for 20 years. James Tucker, who has a wife and 3 children at home, has been with the company for 10 years. None of the crew know Callaway or his reasons for being on this flight.
Express 705, heavy runway 27, clear for takeoff.
Express 705 cleared for takeoff. Lights if you want them. I mean clocks if you want them. Lights are coming on. We'll get the vertical speed wheel here in a minute.
How's the checklist look?
All right, before takeoff is complete.
Your airplane?
Set standard power, please, before they change their mind.
Power is set. Knots.
That checks.
V1, rotate. Positive rate.
Gear up, please.
FedEx Flight 705 is airborne and westward bound. The weather to California is clear, and if all goes as planned, they'll be back home within 10 hours. But back in the cargo area, Auburn Callaway is launching a different plan. A plan he's been shaping and reshaping for several days. Like the brilliant chess player he is, Callaway has thought out all his moves. Being bounced from the crew of Flight 705 today was an unexpected glitch, but nothing he can't cope with. At his home that morning, Callaway already had to make a small adjustment to his plans. The flight bag he'd planned to take with him on his journey is in for repairs, so instead he packs a guitar case. As a company employee, he's unlikely to be searched, and a guitar case seems innocent enough.
here you have a man who made some accomplishments that no other African American had ever made.
Calloway graduated from Stanford University in 1974. He became a top Navy flyer, then a commercial pilot, but his 5 years at FedEx have been as a flight engineer.
He was highly intelligent, a driven person to accomplish goals, and had before him an opportunity of a tremendously positive career. He was married and had children and family, and it just seemed as though he was almost part of the true American dream, just about the American family.
Before leaving for the airport, Calloway put some important documents on his bed. Among them, his last will and testament. FedEx Flight 705 is several minutes outside Memphis, still climbing and passing through 5,800 meters. Jim Tucker is hand-flying the airplane, using control wheel steering mode and enjoying the clear afternoon skies. A couple of meters away sits Auburn Calloway. Behind him lie frustrated expectations of a brilliant career and a marriage that ended in tears.
2 minutes? 9s and 2s here. After takeoff is complete.
Calloway has a terrifying plan. His guitar case is packed with several hammers and a spear gun. Out of sight of the crew, he gets his weapons ready. To be successful, Calloway will have to act quickly. Speed and strength will be critical. Calloway is a former Navy pilot and a martial arts expert, so speed and strength come as part of the package.
The original plan was to take out his original crew, which would have only been 2 individuals. One was a female, much smaller than the crew that he wound up facing on Flight 705.
No, I live in Fisherville.
Fisherville. Great spot.
I had the cockpit door locked open, and I noticed that Calloway was walking up into the cockpit. I just caught him out of the corner of my eye and basically saw his, his arm coming up, and I thought, well, he's just coming up to sit and talk with us for a while.
Excruciating pain, blinding pain. So much, in fact, that I never lost consciousness, but I lost useful consciousness for at least 45 seconds.
A blow to the head will rattle the brain. It will shake it enough that the electrical connections momentarily are not working, and it can be anywhere from a complete, irretrievable loss of consciousness to simply a stun, or to what he describes as a period of time where he was somewhat aware of what was going on, but could not respond to it.
I was slumped back like this, and he looked, I remember, right in my eyes as he passed over. It was almost probably like, well, the lights are on, but there's nobody home here. This guy is out of action, so I'll move on to the next person.
The crew is in shock and confused.
What I saw was simply a face in his eyes and an object coming down at me. I didn't discern any emotion or hate or anger. I just saw a threat, and I didn't really know what the threat was, because it's so shocking. And for a crew member who is a pilot in uniform to attack another pilot is unheard of in the airline industry.
Although terribly injured, Peterson and Tucker are still alive.
Get him! Get him! Get him!
Calloway hurriedly retreats out of the cockpit. Unaware of each other's injuries, the crew starts to mobilize. Calloway has a backup plan. The spear gun stashed outside the cockpit is a deadly weapon.
Sit down! Sit down! Get back to your seats! This is a real gun, and I'll kill you!
There was a loud ringing in my ear, and I was a little unbalanced. But I saw this spear gun, and I thought, well, the only thing I can do is try to grab it. So I grabbed the spear. It sticks out of the spear gun about, 4 inches or so. So I grabbed it right behind the barbs and tried to hang on to it real tight.
Tucker does something that Callaway is not expecting. He pulls back the yoke and puts the plane into a sudden 15-degree climb. It throws the struggling men out of the cockpit into the galley behind.
I had already figured out that what I had in my hands is probably one of the best weapons available, and that was the aircraft itself.
Tucker has not been just a Navy pilot, but a combat instructor flying A-4s. His fighter pilot experience would prove invaluable in the next few minutes.
I was looking at this whole situation as if it was an air combat maneuvering situation.
Get him!
We're taught in the Navy and in the fighter community as the first thing you want to do is engage the bogey, engage the bad guy. You make him predictable by engaging him, and you use his predictability then against him, and then you kill the bogey.
Get him! Get him! Get him!
But the co-pilot doesn't stop there. Tucker immediately rolls the massive aircraft to the left in an acrobatic maneuver to try and disarm Callaway. The men roll along the smoke curtain to the left side of the plane.
I knew that I had to do something very abrupt, very, very rough, and something that he would not be expecting.
Tucker has no idea whether rolling the plane is helping Sanders and Peterson as they try to restrain Callaway. The fight continues with the men pinned to the left side of the plane. The crew members are rapidly losing blood and strength. Tucker continues to execute the roll, all the while trying to maintain a visual reference outside the captain's window.
Get him, Andy, I got the airplane.
So you roll the airplane over on its back and pull through completely in the vertical. But at this particular point, if I'd rolled the airplane over on its back, I wouldn't really be able to see what I was doing. This is not a bubble canopy that you have over the top. You're actually looking out. It's got expansive windows, but nonetheless, you roll this airplane over on its back, you can't really see that much of what you're doing. So I rolled it to about 140 degrees where I could still see out over the side as the airplane's nose was starting to come through.
Tucker rolls the 250,000-kilogram DC-10 to 140 degrees, almost on its back. Commercial aircraft are never meant to roll more than 60 degrees. The men continue their fight on the ceiling of the aircraft. Callaway wrenches the hammer in his hand free and hits Sanders in the head. Tucker decides to pull back on the yoke and put the plane into a steep dive, a risky but cunning move. The G-force of the dive pushes the men back along the ceiling to the smoke curtain. The plane is traveling at a very dangerous speed. Tucker is making demands of the aircraft for which it was not designed. DC-10s are never meant to be flown past 695 kilometers per hour. Tucker is over 800 kilometers per hour. No DC-10 in history has been flown so fast and survived.
The airspeed indicator was maxed. It was all the way to what we call the barber pole. Couldn't go any faster, but you could tell that you were going quite a bit faster because of things you don't normally hear in a jet that size, and one is the incredible amounts of sound of wind coming across the cockpit.
The plane approaches supersonic speed. With the increased airspeed, the airflow over the stabilizer becomes disrupted. The elevators begin to flutter back and forth. If the flutter becomes more pronounced, they may become inoperable, and Tucker will no longer have the means to pull the plane out of the dive.
If I didn't pull out soon, the airplane was probably going to come apart because I was getting into a phenomenon known as Mach tuck, where the airplane is pitching over because the airspeed is increasing so much. The wind flow over the surfaces of the wings is doing things that it's not even designed to do.
The injury to the left side of Tucker's brain is beginning to paralyze functions on the right side of his body. Tucker notices something alarming. The plane is traveling at this incredible speed because the throttle levers have been left in their automatic climb setting from takeoff. The DC-10 is now in a vertical dive with the engines at nearly full power. Tucker must release his only usable hand from the yoke to pull back on the throttles. With power reduced to idle, the DC-10 is still not out of danger. Despite Tucker's maneuvers, Callaway is gaining the upper hand.
Callaway hit me with the third blow, which was in the top of my head, nearly rendered me unconscious. I began to gray out. At that very same time, it occurred to me we might lose this thing.
As Tucker starts to pull the plane carefully out of the dive, the elevator flutter increases. Balance panels, counterweights that help the pilots manipulate the elevator, break free and begin to wrinkle the skin of the stabilizer. Tucker fears that if he pulls back too hard during the dive, all the surfaces on the tail section would be in danger of coming off. Sanders' strength is nearly spent, and Peterson's head is bleeding profusely from his ruptured temporal artery. Somehow they manage to pin their attacker down.
The G-forces began to be reduced as he began to level off from pulling out of the dive. I saw the hammer in Callaway's hand. I then reached for the hammer with both my hands and pulled the hammer out of his hand.
Sanders believes this is a turning point. The plane is safe for the moment. About a minute after the attack begins, Tucker finally has a chance to radio Memphis.
Center emergency.
Air traffic controller Kent Fleshman and his trainee receive Tucker's emergency request.
Aircraft with emergency, say again.
Center.
Aircraft with emergency, say again.
Listen to me. It's Express 705. I've been wounded. We've had an attempt to take over and aboard the airplane. Give me a vector, please. Back to Memphis at this time. Hurry.
Express 705, fly heading 095, direct Memphis.
095. Direct to Memphis. Get me an ambulance and alert the airport facility. Hey, Memphis, you still with me?
Affirmative 705, descend and maintain 10,000.
Fleshman takes action in case the hijacker has a gun. If he can get the plane below 3,000 meters, a bullet hole in the fuselage will not cause explosive decompression. Tucker hears the fight increase in the galley. Again, he uses his only weapon, the aircraft. The maneuver throws the men onto the side of the plane.
Let go of the spear! Look, just keep talking to me, okay?
Express 705, affirmative. If you need an ambulance, stand by and we'll get that for you.
Yeah, we need an ambulance, and we need armed intervention as well.
Make sure and notify the SWAT team he's asking for armed intervention.
Fleshman recognizes the term armed intervention as the most serious request from a pilot. It means they want armed officials to storm the plane upon landing. Memphis approach has to be alerted.
We have an emergency, Express 705. He's had an attempted takeover on the aircraft.
He's had an attempted takeover. Okay. Radar contact. Put him on 119.1.
Paul Candelino, a 44-year-old veteran controller, now spots Flight 705 on his radar screen. But something's wrong. The plane is heading away from the airport. It looks like the hijacker has seized the plane. The crew of FedEx Flight 705 has been attacked by a co-worker and have declared an emergency.
Intervention.
Air traffic control watches helplessly as they fly away from the airport, while the fight for control of the plane continues. Co-pilot James Tucker is pushing the DC-10, his best weapon, to its limits. He now throws the wheel round, flipping the massive plane in the opposite direction. Tucker, drawing on his military experience, reverses the role, keeping his maneuvers unpredictable.
Here I am, all alone in the cockpit. The fight is still going on in the back. I don't know who's winning, I don't know who's losing. And that was about the only time I really had time to be frightened, and it was a very horrifying situation at that point, thinking that quite possibly Auburn was winning.
3.5 minutes after the attack, though pinned and injured, Auburn Calloway will not relinquish the spear.
The anger was coming in then, and so when I hit him, it was with the intent to disable him and eliminate his ability to fight. Not kill, but to injure him sufficiently that he could fight no more. So when I swung the hammer, it was with all the strength that I had.
Sanders and Peterson momentarily subdue Calloway.
Put it on autopilot. Get back here.
The captain's yelling at Tucker to come and help, but he's the one flying the plane.
I've contact Memphis approach on 119.1. They are aware of your emergency.
Jim, quick, Jim.
Request a single frequency approach.
Single frequency approach, roger. We'll pass that along. 119.1.
Put it on autopilot. Come on, Jim, quick. Get back here.
But you have to understand that that's probably the strangest request that I've ever had, come my way, because here I am, the only one up front in the cockpit now, and for me to go ahead and get up and go to the back means I've got to, first of all, stand up, which I didn't know until the particular time I tried to stand up. It was very, very difficult to do so.
Jim Tucker, with a fractured skull and only one side of his body functioning, puts the plane on autopilot and struggles out of his seat to help.
Hey, wait a minute, I'm coming.
Autopilot.
But the plane's gyros haven't stabilized sufficiently for the autopilot to take over.
Okay.
Now, no one's flying the plane.
705 Heavy, how do you hear?
Paul Candelino tries to establish radio contact with Flight 705, but there's no response. Their radar screens show the aircraft turn to the north, then the west, finally southwest, heading away from the airport. There's only an eerie silence. Anything could be happening on board the plane.
As I stepped into the forward cargo area, I was absolutely amazed at what I was seeing. All three of the individuals are completely covered with blood. Auburn Calloway on his back. There are papers everywhere in the back. You can see where the jump seats, which is just a normal commercial airline seat, has had the covers torn off. There's bloody footprints on the top of the ceiling. There are coats that have come out of closets. It's total carnage in the back.
Sanders has disarmed Calloway and handed the spear to Tucker.
You move up to it.
You keep him contained. I'm going to get the airplane.
Go get the airplane.
They decide that Sanders, the captain, should fly the plane back to Memphis.
You take this.
Tucker wants the weapons as far away from Calloway as possible and asks Sanders to take them with him to the cockpit.
In an emergency situation, it's expected that the captain of the airplane will fly the airplane. I was in somewhat of a daze because of the fight. I wasn't sure of the direction of the airplane. I wasn't sure of the condition of the airplane, but it appeared to be flying okay. I was bleeding excessively from the top of my head. I couldn't see out of my left eye. I thought the fight was over. I mean, I had hit Calloway 4 times in the head with a 20-ounce framing hammer as hard as I could swing it. He had stopped fighting, and he was bleeding, and he looked like he was severely injured.
Tucker can't tell anymore whether his hand is gripping the spear. The blows to his head have caused a blood clot on his brain and have damaged his sense of touch.
Let me up! Let me up! I won't fight anymore, please! I can't breathe!
Though several gashes have been opened in his skull, Auburn Calloway cannot be trusted. Both pilots know their strength is quickly running out.
I can't breathe!
Sanders, safely back in the driver's seat, must get the plane on the ground, and fast.
Memphis, can you hear me?
Is this Express 705 Heavy?
705 Heavy, yes.
Express 705 Heavy, Memphis. Roger, I do hear you. You can proceed direct to Memphis if able. Expect runway 9er. The altimeter is 30.29er.
You understand we're declaring an emergency. We need security to meet the airplane. We'll stop on the runway if we can.
Captain Sanders, without his glasses and with blood dripping into his eyes, thinks that the plane is on a course back to the airport. But it's still heading southwest, away from Memphis at over 550 kilometers per hour.
Roger. Express 705 Heavy, is the situation under control?
Or is it still in progress?
We appear to have it under control.
Candelino wants to warn the pilot, but he's afraid the crew may still be under attack and trying to mislead the hijackers by flying in the wrong direction.
Express 705 Heavy, are you able to turn toward the airport?
Yeah, give me a vector.
100 Vector Memphis.
Sanders takes the plane off autopilot and sets a course back to the airport.
We're turning to the airport now.
For now, aboard the DC-10, the situation seems under control, but a potential disaster is only moments away. At the Memphis airport, emergency personnel begin to move into position.
We need security to meet the airplane. We'll stop on the runway if we can.
A FedEx cargo plane is about to land after a would-be hijacker tried to seize control. All members of the crew are badly injured. Paramedic David Teague is one of the first to get the call.
They came over the loudspeaker system from the air traffic control center, and I was new to the area, so I wasn't able to understand them real well. But I got the words hijacking and some other stuff, and was advised that there had been a hijacking on an airplane, and then dispatched us out to the runway where the plane was going to be landed.
The airplane is heading for the safety of Memphis Airport, but that in itself presents another scary possibility. The aircraft is more than 16,000 kilos over the recommended landing weight, with more than 38,000 kilos of fuel still in its tanks. In most emergency landing situations, there's time and opportunity to dump any excess fuel. But Sanders knows the switches and levers are too far away to access safely.
You'd have to get up and go back to the engineer's panel where the fuel dumping switches are and set up the engineer's fuel panel to dump fuel. So it's virtually impossible for, say, the captain to dump fuel while he's attempting to fly the airplane.
In the galley, Auburn Calloway still hasn't given up the fight. Calloway drags himself towards the jump seats with Peterson and Tucker on top of him. He hopes to gain enough leverage to get back on his feet, where he'll have an advantage.
He was using his thumbs to go ahead and try and push my eyes out, doing everything he possibly could to break Andy and I down as a team. You know, we could handle him together, but we certainly couldn't handle it one-on-one. This is certainly a fight against the clock. Auburn's getting stronger. We're getting weaker.
I knew if he ever got back in the cockpit, we were history. I just knew we had to keep him. Somehow, we had to keep him from getting back in that cockpit.
Approaching 7,000 feet, the fight in the back started again. And it was as violent and as loud as when I was in the back in the midst of the fight. It became so violent and loud that approaching 7,000 feet, I decided that I was going to level the airplane, turn on the autopilot, go to the back of the airplane, and kill Calloway. It was so severe, I thought that had to be done.
The DC-10 is less than 40 kilometers from Memphis Airport.
Is he under control?
I don't know.
The sound of the struggle worries Sanders. He decides this has to end.
I released the seatbelt, climbed out of my seat, headed to the back of the airplane, and Jim Tucker said to me, "David, I think we have him under control now." I said, "Are you sure?"
Yeah, he is.
He said, "I think we have him under control." I went back to the seat, climbed into the left seat of the airplane, continued the descent on down toward the airport.
Express 705 Heavy, verify the situation is still under control?
Yeah, it's sort of under control.
Wind is 03015, cleared to land runway 9er.
Clear to land?
Now Sanders faces yet another possible disaster. The delay caused by getting out of his seat means he's way over the normal approach speed, too high and too fast. He'll not be able to slow the overweight plane quickly enough to land on runway 9er.
I'm coming around to 36 left.
Runway 36 left is longer at 2,800 meters, but it's perpendicular to his flight path. To land there, he needs to make a series of turns, reasonable maneuvers for a fighter jet or a crop duster, but for an overloaded DC-10 with an injured pilot, nearly impossible. First, he must turn 90 degrees to the right, fly parallel to the runway, and then execute a tight 180-degree turn.
Okay, Express 705 Heavy, runway 36 left, cleared to land. Cleared visual approach 36 left. Wind is 050 at 8.
Bank angle.
Sanders must ignore the computer warnings and push the plane beyond normal operating limits. The plane is nearly on its side.
All of a sudden, he just turned it up on his wingtip, looked like a fighter jet, and put it in a real tight turn, and then disappeared down behind the terminal. When he got down low enough, we couldn't see him. And at first, I thought he might have crashed because there was some construction going on the airport at that time, and there was some smoke coming up south of the terminal, kind of where we were going.
A hammer is lying in the galley. The men struggle to reach it. This could be Callaway's last chance to gain control. Sanders has turned 90 degrees to the south, flying the downwind leg parallel to runway 36 left.
The airplane was probably at about 300 feet above the ground at that time. The throttles are at idle. They've been at idle since I left 7,000 feet. That's an extremely unusual engine power setting to land a big airplane. You always land, make the approach with power on, a lot of power on. In this case, it was at idle because I wanted the airplane to slow down so that we would not exceed the limits of the landing gear and the flaps, so that we would touch down at or below 195 knots.
With flaps extended and landing gear down, Sanders is still coming in too fast, and he's being bombarded by computerized auto-warning alarms. The runway is 2,800 meters long. A normal DC-10 needs only 1,900 meters to stop, but Flight 705 is too heavy. Even this runway may not be long enough. Peterson manages for the first time in the fight to get hold of a hammer, but is extremely weak due to blood loss.
You gotta hit him, Andy, you gotta hit him!
I was almost like pleading with him, and I told him, I said, Andy, you know, you gotta hit him. You know, he's about ready to, to take us down.
And I guess I gave him kind of a blank stare of, what are you talking about? And he looked at me real stern, like a father would look at his son, saying, you've got to do this. And he said, hit him.
The DC-10 is only meters above the runway, traveling at 382 kilometers per hour. Sanders can only hope he won't explode the tires or crash beyond the runway. Luckily, all 10 tires withstand the landing impact. Captain David Sanders has landed the plane with only 300 meters of runway to spare. The crew of Flight 705 is safely on the ground, but not out of danger.
Blow the door!
The chute is covered with kind of a talcum powder, so it won't stick when it needs to be deployed, but it made it slick trying to go up.
The police and firemen tried to climb up the slide. One fireman made it almost all the way to the top, and I leaned out the door of the airplane and pulled him on board.
Who's the bad guy?
That's the attacker.
There was blood all over the floor, all over the ceiling. The seats in the little area were just covered with blood.
You got any handcuffs? If not, you better get some, because that son of a bitch is still dangerous.
I need handcuffs. Can you throw me some handcuffs?
Teague is thrown a pair of handcuffs.
Stand here in the middle of the chain.
Ouch! Get your foot off! You're hurting me! Ow!
Sanders holds Calloway down as Teague examines Peterson, who barely has a pulse and is the first crew member to leave the plane. Sanders is the last member of the crew on board.
Standing in the door of the airplane, I had a sense of euphoria I've never experienced before or since. It was the sense of we had been there, and we came back and we won.
Due to the strength and courage of its crew, a FedEx DC-10 has safely landed back home. The three men have weathered the attack of a co-worker, but they're badly injured. Co-pilot Jim Tucker has bone chips driven into his brain. Flight engineer Andy Peterson's life is in danger from massive blood loss. Both are in critical condition. The wounded men are rushed to the regional medical center at Memphis. The pilot, Dave Sanders, shares an ambulance with Tucker. It's only during this ride that he realizes the extent and severity of his co-pilot's injuries. Tucker is taken to emergency by stretcher. Sanders is helped, but can walk. Restrained and under guard, Calloway is also taken to the same emergency facility. But the important question still remains: why did Auburn Calloway attack the crew of Flight 705? The full story is beginning to unfold. Divorced in 1990, Auburn Calloway still tries to support his ex-wife and their two children, and wants to secure their financial future.
He was very interested in the welfare of his children, very interested that they not live the kind of childhood he had lived.
The evidence for a suicidal mission against FedEx grows as investigators search the aircraft and find a letter to Calloway's estranged wife.
Dear Pat, I want you and the kids to know that I lived for you. I thought of your welfare every day. Though, for example, how can I guarantee having enough money for Keela and Bernie's Stanford education?
He was obsessed with his financial well-being. He was interested in his children. I tend to believe he's interested in his marriage. And I know his marriage was coming apart, or had come apart, basically, at the time of this incident. But I suspect he was also a difficult man to be married to.
By April the 7th, 1994, Calloway may be thinking his career is over. Life had been one disappointment after another. The failed marriage, the kids he can't afford to send to university, the brilliant pilot who ends up as an engineer on a cargo plane. And now even that may be about to go. The following day, he's supposed to report to a FedEx hearing about falsified information he'd given the company.
During our investigation, it appeared that he had overestimated the number of hours of flight experience that he had, and that the company was taking a look at this.
Calloway may be afraid he'll be fired. At just 42, his professional life could be finished. He comes up with a solution.
The goal is to leave my children well off. The goal is to escape, I guess, the pain of this life. I can't continue to participate in this life and still leave them well off because I'm fixing to lose my career. And I won't have the ability to provide for them like I'd like to. But my life has value if it's given in an accident.
Calloway cashes in all the funds he can lay his hands on and sends a total of $54,000 to his ex-wife. But his life insurance is worth about $2.5 million if he dies in a work-related accident.
I would much rather go on a date, time, place, and a method of my own choosing. I resolved some time ago that the next time my security and future is threatened or seriously jeopardized, it's time. My time to go.
Perhaps he believes his family would receive the maximum insurance payout if he crashed the plane in an apparent accident. If this was Calloway's idea, he was planning it perfectly. He was armed with unusual weapons for hijacking, hammers and a spear gun. After injuring the crew, he could take control of the plane. A bomb or gun could leave traces at the scene of a crash, but if investigators found a spear gun or hammers, it would be very difficult to tie them to an attack on the crew.
I believe it would have been impossible to tell the difference in the type of injuries that a hammer would have made with the type of injuries that you might sustain in a large crash. Auburn had spent the week leading up to this incident preparing to die and basically get his affairs in order.
Calloway even goes to a lawyer to change his will before boarding the FedEx flight.
He left his will and testament on his bed so that it would be easily found.
For any crash to look like an accident, there is a key obstacle: the plane's cockpit voice recorder. Switching off the CVR's power would disable any recording.
I think she'll fly.
As long as all the nuts and bolts are there.
Yeah.
If Peterson in his pre-flight inspection discovers the thrown switch, it would be a setback. But Calloway would know he simply has to fly the airplane for half an hour. That's the length of the tape's recording time. After 30 minutes, any incriminating recording would be gone forever.
I think he was going to do something very, very horrible with it. Something along the lines of what we've seen on 9/11.
Had Calloway been able to seize control of the plane, he could have crashed the DC-10 with over 38,000 kilos of fuel aboard into any site, including the FedEx headquarters, the hub, crippling his employer and killing a large number of workers on the ground. It would have been the ultimate revenge for perceived injustices by the company.
The company may never have figured out exactly why that airplane crashed back into the hub.
Well, after 9/11, there were a lot of improvements to our security program, both in the United States and worldwide. Our cockpit crew members are the most highly checked and monitored group of people in the world. I only know of this one incident in my 46 years of aviation experience where a crew member was involved in something like this.
The flight of FedEx 705 took about 30 minutes, but the impact it had will last for years.
He was convicted of attempt aircraft piracy, an offense that carried a minimum of 20 years confinement and up to life in prison.
Although Auburn Calloway pleaded temporary insanity at his trial, the jury didn't believe him and found him guilty. On August the 11th, 1995, he was sentenced to life imprisonment in a federal penitentiary. He has no chance of parole.
The pilots on Flight 705, they are the real heroes. It is amazing that they were able to do what they did, given the injuries that were inflicted upon them.
When someone's struck with a hammer on the skull, there can be linear radiating cracks that go out on the skull. And then if it's hard enough, there may well be in-driven bone right at the site where the hammer head hits the skull and drives it into the skull.
This is a replica of my skull cap. It was put together by use of a CAT scan protocol to give the proper shape of my skull and also the shape of the defect that we're dealing with here. This is the area that I was hit on the left parietal. For a year and a half, I was actually walking around in this configuration. It took 2.5 years to recover completely because I had to learn how to walk, talk, and chew gum all over again. I had 3 major operations.
I operated on him twice more after his initial injury and then followed him through his rehabilitation.
they can fashion a piece of material to fit the exact size of the defect, the shape of the skull, and of course the thickness of the skull as well. It's a blown acrylic called an HTR, or hard tissue replacement.
He had difficulty with speech, difficulty with sensation and motor strength on the right side, and he came back to where he can now probably, if he wanted to, break my fingers with a handshake.
On May the 26th, 1994, the crew of FedEx Flight 705 was awarded the Airline Pilots Association Gold Medal Award for heroism, the highest award a civilian pilot can receive. However, because of the legacy of their injuries, none of the crew has been certified as medically fit to fly commercially.
I always thought, I'm gonna fight, I'm gonna overcome this thing. Except that that's when they found out that I had a slight seizure disorder. I'm seizure-free, but it's because I had to take medication. And the only way for me to be able to fly without somebody with me is to be off of medication. At this particular point, it's been ascertained that I'll never be able to do that. I'll be on medication for the rest of my life.
I miss the flying. Every time I see an airplane go over, I wonder where it's going. So I miss that part of it. But I really cherish the fact that, I'm still alive and able to be with my family.
The bond of pilots and what you do together in the airplane, outside the airplane, all that, I miss that. I miss it very much.
A freight train is out of control.
Get on the phone. Tell them we got a runaway train.
7551 to West Colton.
Its brakes can't hold it as it rockets down a mountain.
Mayday, Mayday. We're doing 90 miles an hour. 9-0.
Now thousands of tons of steel and freight are heading straight for a small town.
We're gonna die on that curve.
An innocent mistake risks the lives of everyone on board and many more in the town below.
3,000? We're not getting any oxygen. We have the terrain alarm. Aero Peru 603. We are in an emergency.
San Bernardino, California, a quiet suburban town at the foot of the San Gabriel Mountains. It's a great place to raise a family, in between the emptiness of the Mojave Desert and the bustle of Los Angeles.
When we had problems in the neighborhood, we could go to one another, and it was a very nice neighborhood.
But in 1989, San Bernardino is rocked by two disasters. 6 people are killed, 18 houses are completely destroyed. It begins with an out-of-control train.
60, 70, 80!
And ends with a raging fire.
You could see a huge cloud of black smoke in the air.
The scene looked like Dante's Inferno.
The disasters appear linked, but they happen more than a week apart. Investigators comb through the wreckage to find the hidden connection.
Help! Somebody help me!
They uncover a series of shocking decisions which have deadly consequences for some and scar a town forever. Early morning, May the 12th, 1989. On a railroad siding in the desert, a freight train waits to head up over California's San Gabriel Mountains. Frank Holland is the chief engineer for Southern Pacific Freight Train number 7551 East.
Well, my job as an engineer is to get on the train,
operate the locomotives, obey the rules, speeds, slow down at restrictions, and get the train from point A to point B.
His work on this trip actually began the night before at the Mojave Rail Yard. Some of Southern Pacific's freight trains are put together here, picking up crews and engines to take them across the country. Holland is here to collect the paperwork he'll need for the journey.
Hey, Frank.
Holland was promoted to chief engineer 3 years before.
Okay, clearance form, train orders, train list, and tonnage profile.
His paperwork tells him he's hauling 69 freight cars, each one weighing 54,431 kilos. Holland also learns that the cars are all filled with the same thing, trona. It's a non-toxic chemical used in fertilizer.
So you start making your calculations on what kind of horsepower you're going to have to take that train down that hill. And that will tell you at what speed you can go.
Thanks. Have a good one.
Altogether, Holland's paperwork tells him he's hauling more than 3.5 million kilos of cargo, more than 10 jumbo jets. The cargo's final destination is South America. Today, Holland's only taking it as far as the West Colton Terminal near Los Angeles. To do that, he'll have to haul the cargo up the San Gabriel Mountains and through the Cajon Pass. Then he'll carefully slow his huge train as it winds down the mountain.
Hey guys, we're going down to West Colton. We got 69 cars filled with trona.
Everett Crown is the conductor of 7551. He'll sit up in the front engine to assist Holland. Alan Reese is the brakeman this morning. He'll ride 2 engines back. Between them, the 3 men have almost 50 years of experience working the trains with Southern Pacific. To make sure he has enough power to move his train up and down the mountain, Holland has asked for a little assistance. Southern Pacific dispatchers sent him 2 helper engines. Lawrence Hill is the engineer at the back. Robert Waterbury is his brakeman. While they've run this route before, it's not where they normally work. They don't know the weight of the cargo they're helping to haul, and they don't ask. 7551 East now has 4 engines up front and 2 behind. With the last 2 in place, the train is all set to go.
Helper calling head end.
Head end.
Coupled and ready to go.
Roger that.
.7551 East slowly gathers steam. In just an hour and a half, it'll reach the top of the mountains, the 1,300-meter-high Cajon Pass.
Helper to head end.
Head end.
We've cleared the siding.
Thank you.
On the other side of the mountains, the town of San Bernardino is slowly coming to life. The Muscoy section is a fairly new development on the northwestern edge of the town. It's filled with single-story homes and growing families. Christopher Shaw is waking up at 2326 Duffy Street. It's his mother's house, but after a fight with his girlfriend, he'd spent the night. Across the street, Ruth Green has succeeded in getting 3 children out of bed and off to school. Her only daughter, Lavon, is staying home.
It's just my daughter and I, and we're just making ready for what we considered a normal morning. We had had our breakfast and was straightening up in the kitchen.
One of the only things people don't like about this part of San Bernardino is the train tracks. Trains race by on top of a 6-meter-high levee. Some of the houses on Duffy Street back right up to the tracks.
When the homes went up for sale, the realtor was showing my husband a home that was on the same side of the street as the tracks. The tracks would have been behind our home, and he said no, he didn't want that.
Just after 7 a.m., 7551 East reaches the highest point of its trip, the Cajon Pass. It's all downhill from here. The pass is a vital rail link between Los Angeles and the rest of the world. It's one of only 3 ways to get through the mountains. Dozens of trains rumble through here every day.
Traditionally, in railroading, mountain railroaders are respected as the big guys, the tough guys, because they have the most demanding job. Cajon Pass is one of the toughest mountain passes for railroaders to deal with in the entire United States. So many trains go over it, and it is extremely demanding that everyone has to be on their toes 100% all the time.
No chance.
No?
No.
Engineer Frank Holland and conductor Everett Crown have the train right on time. There hasn't been any communication between the men at the front and the 2 men at the back of the train since the trip began. There's been no need. Everything's running smoothly. Now comes the most critical part of the journey, slowing the massive train as it starts down the mountain.
What we do when we run a train from the Mojave area to Colton is basically we drive it off a cliff. At that point, the track tips over and goes downhill at a very steep grade, 2.2%. And for trains, 2.2 feet down in every 100 feet is like falling off a cliff.
As 7551 East begins heading downhill, the crews still believe it's a normal run. What they don't know is that their train is already out of control, and they have no way to slow it down. May the 12th, 1989. Just after 7 in the morning, Southern Pacific Freight Train 7551 East begins the long, slow descent from the top of the San Gabriel Mountains. The massive train is hauling 69 cars full of freight. At the bottom of the hill, the sleepy town of San Bernardino, California. As the tracks start dipping downhill, engineer Frank Holland first applies his dynamic brakes. They slow each of the 6 engines, reducing the speed of the entire train. He's only allowed to go 48 kilometers an hour through the pass. He checks in with Lawrence Hill, the engineer in the helper engine at the back of the train, to make sure he can maintain his speed.
Call in the helper.
This is the helper.
You got all your dynamics?
Yeah, I'm in full.
Roger that.
The first part of the downhill run twists back and forth 56 times. The friction from the turns helps slow the mammoth train. Even with the turns, Holland starts applying his air brakes. They put pressure on the wheels of each freight car. The train is now traveling at 40 kilometers an hour. That's exactly where Holland wants it to stay. Once through the curves, though, Holland's brakeman Everett Crown notices that the train is picking up speed.
Frank, we're at 30.
Should be at 25.
The train actually was maintaining its speed. It might have been picking up just a little bit, but we still had a long way to go.
It's creeping.
Confused, Holland continues to increase the pressure on the air brakes. But the train just keeps going faster.
By the time it reached 40 miles an hour, I was very concerned. The train was speeding.
As the train approaches 72 kilometers an hour, Holland turns his air brakes on full. But it doesn't help. At the bottom of the hill, the track bends around the town of San Bernardino. Frank Holland knows he's not supposed to go more than 64 kilometers an hour around the corner. Partway down the hill, he's already going much faster than that. Ruth Green's husband has left for work. Her 3 youngest children are off to school. Across the street, Chris Shaw is just about to take a shower. Engineer Frank Holland knows there are several houses that are right in the way if his train comes off the track.
I've been over that territory many times, and yeah, I knew that there was a curve coming down there that we weren't going to make.
At the back of the train, engineer Lawrence Hill also knows they're in trouble. The air brakes are turned on full, but the train isn't slowing down at all.
Something must be wrong up there.
Without talking to the front of the train, Hill slams on the train's emergency brakes. It's their last chance.
The train at that point tried to slow down a little bit. A couple seconds later, it was off to the races. It just took off like a rocket. The speed was going up so fast, I couldn't even believe it.
The emergency brakes haven't worked. Smoke begins pouring out from underneath the train, and it just keeps going faster.
60, 70, 80.
It stopped at 90 because that's as far as the speedometer would go.
But Holland knows 7551 East is still picking up speed.
I'm thinking, my God, I'm fired. Actually, that's what I thought. I'm just looking at everything that I've done. I'm trying to go back and see where I had made a mistake, what had happened.
7551 to West Colton. 7551 to West Colton.
We're trying to get a hold of the train dispatcher, and he won't answer.
The train is out of control, and they can't tell anyone about it.
At that point, we're just kind of out there by ourselves.
Try that phone again.
7551 to West Colton.
West Colton, go ahead.
We have a slight problem.
At the back of the train, engineer Lawrence Hill listens to the radio call.
I don't know if we can get this train stopped.
He breaks in, desperate to tell the dispatcher how dangerous the situation is.
Mayday, Mayday! We're doing 90 miles an hour. 90! Out of control. Won't be able to stop till we hit Colton.
But there's nothing the dispatcher can do. The train is traveling at more than 160 kilometers an hour. The houses of San Bernardino are just seconds away. Down in the town, a strange rumbling breaks the morning calm.
My house began to vibrate. The house was rattling so hard, I would have thought that the windows would have broke. It just got worse and worse. By then, I realized it was the train.
As we were coming up to that curve, I looked over at Everett and I said,
"We're gonna die on that curve."
He wild-eyed, like he was just couldn't believe and just scared to death, and I'm sure I looked the same way. All I knew is that I just put my feet up there and I said, hang on, here we go. I never expected to survive.
AGYM Saugus dispatcher, please come in. We're on the ground here between Dyke and Stover. Mayday! Mayday!
In the helper engine at the back of the train, engineer Lawrence Hill desperately calls the Southern Pacific dispatcher. Being at the end of the train has saved him from injury, but he's not sure everyone else has been so lucky.
SP7551, anybody, please come in.
It takes more than a minute for Hill to get a response to his frantic call.
Saugus dispatcher, 7551 East, over.
Saugus dispatcher, we are all over the ground here. I haven't heard anything from the head end. They may need some assistance. We went on the ground.
Incredibly, engineer Frank Holland survives the wreck. The man in charge of the train crawls away from his ruined engine, the first of the cars to derail.
Everett, where's Everett? We gotta get him. He's still inside. Let's get you down first.
He's helped out of the train by eyewitnesses to the disaster.
When they pulled me off of the locomotive and set me down, it was just, I just couldn't believe it. The cars were just mangled, the locomotives were destroyed. It was just, you know, unbelievable devastation. I looked back at that and I went, oh my God, what did I do?
Frank Holland has broken several ribs. One of his lungs is punctured. The man who was riding with him, Everett Crown, is soon found dead. As is Alan Reese, the brakeman who was riding in the third engine. Footage taken shortly after the crash shows the scale of the disaster. 7 houses have been destroyed. The train itself is a write-off.
As the dust cleared, then you could see some of the cars had, you know, toppled over. You could see that it looked like, you know, some houses were gone.
You could see just a twisted, jumbled mass of metal. These cars are turned over. You're really trying to grapple with, what is this? What's happened?
Alan Simpson is a battalion chief with the San Bernardino Fire Department.
The house that we focused on, with the information that the mother gave us about one individual, was totally obliterated. You wouldn't recognize it as a house. It looked like a jumble of somebody gone through it with a bulldozer.
They were hollering that there's somebody still in there. We later learned that that was where Chris Shaw lived. And when you looked at that house, it was like you would say there was no way anybody could still be alive under all of that rubble and wreckage.
The wreckage is also hiding an explosive problem no one in the neighborhood knew about. Running alongside the railway, about 2 meters below the ground, is a pipeline carrying fuel back up the mountain. If it's been damaged in the derailment, a single spark could cause a major explosion.
Prior to this incident, we were not aware that this pipeline existed and ran directly behind our homes.
The thought's always in the back of your mind if you have something like that. This is major, 14-inch pipe full of pressurized fuel. We know what that's going to do if it ruptures.
The pipeline is operated by the Kalnev Pipeline Company. It pulls hundreds of barrels of fuel from the pipe, trying to reduce the size of any potential explosion. But much more fuel remains behind. Automatic safety valves in the pipeline that are supposed to shut off individual sections aren't working. The company can't completely drain the area under the derailment. Almost 3 hours after the crash, rescue workers find the body of a small child. He's the second young boy killed in the disaster.
Well, after we recovered the 2 children from the one house, there wasn't a lot of hope for finding anybody else at that point. But you never give up hope. You always keep trying.
But there's pressure to wind the search down. Every moment spent looking for Chris Shaw further delays the cleanup. And Kalnev can't check the pipeline properly until the rail cars are gone. An entire neighborhood holds its breath. Is there any chance Shaw could possibly have lived through the disaster? Southern Pacific train 7551 East has crashed into San Bernardino, California. 4 people are dead, and an entire neighborhood has been evacuated. A gas pipeline under the wreck hasn't been checked yet. Chris Shaw was in one of the houses destroyed when the train derailed. 12 hours later, he's still missing. George Avery, a firefighter for less than a year, takes his shift at the crash site.
We were ordered to relieve the crews that were trying to search for a body. And at that time, they thought it was a body recovery.
Shaw is the last person in the neighborhood still to be accounted for. Workers ask his mother to draw a map of the house. She tells them her son was in the bathroom when the train derailed. Workers concentrate their final search effort there.
There's pieces of the house itself sticking out of this big potash mound. So you have studs and rafters and roof covering. So they gave me a specific area, so I started removing the product. And as I did so for, it seemed like an eternity, but it was probably an hour, hour and a half, this void occurred and started to reveal itself in front of me.
As Avery reaches into the opening, he feels something snag his jacket.
So then I immediately pulled it out, thinking it was caught on a nail or whatever. As I pulled it out and looked inside, I saw this hand waving in front.
I found him! I found him!
Help! Somebody help me!
It takes workers nearly an hour and a half to pull Chris from the wreckage. Debris from the train had formed a protective cocoon around him. It gave Shaw air to breathe and kept the jagged metal from crushing him.
We were absolutely amazed that he lived, especially that long. We're talking about most of the day. Really didn't think he had much of a chance, so when he came up out of there, it was just stunning.
With Shaw's rescue, everyone in the neighborhood and on the train has been found. The wreck of 7551 East has killed 4 people, injured 4 more, and totally destroyed 7 houses. Even with Shaw's rescue, San Bernardino's troubles aren't over yet. If the Kalnev pipeline has been damaged, it could explode at any time, destroying more homes and taking more lives. With that threat hanging over the neighborhood, the search for the cause of the derailment begins. William Pugh and Russell Quimby are with the National Transportation Safety Board.
By the time the team got there, it was fairly late and it was dark, and the scene looked like Dante's Inferno. A lot of wreckage, a lot of parts still, particularly the brake parts, wheels, red hot still after 12 hours. Wheels had gotten so hot they'd literally expanded off the axles.
The friction between the wheels, the brakes, and the tracks was so intense that the wheels themselves began to liquefy, turning to molten steel as the train sped down the hill. Investigators know the train's brakes couldn't slow it down, but why? The next day, cleanup operations begin. Southern Pacific needs to clear its ruined train from the area. It's the only way investigators can work and Calnev can check its pipeline. Southern Pacific has all of the cars moved 2 days later, but the ground is still covered with 7551 East's cargo, hundreds of tons of trona. Calnev begins clearing the trona along the route of the pipeline. It's the quickest way to inspect the line, and it keeps the heavy equipment away.
They made 5 or 6 excavations down to the pipeline to visually look at the pipeline. They felt comfortable that nothing had penetrated to the depth of the pipeline.
The fuel is under incredible pressure. Any damage could lead to a massive leak and possible explosion. But Calnev finds nothing. The depth of the pipe has shielded it from the storm above. The pipeline is a vital source of gas for Las Vegas, almost 320 kilometers away. It supplies both civilian and military customers in the desert. There's pressure to get the gas moving again.
There were a number of people in the community that thought it should not be open, and supposedly people in Las Vegas had said that they had cars that were worth more than our homes on Duffy Street, and so fire up the pipeline.
Just 4 days after the derailment, the pipeline is restarted. Calnev watches for any drop in pressure. It would mean fuel was escaping, that there was a leak somewhere in the system. But it holds. The very same day, Southern Pacific finishes its repairs on the damaged railway. Trains are once again moving past San Bernardino. The cleanup isn't quite finished, though. More of the ash-like cargo of train 7551 East is littered across the area. Heavy machinery comes in to dig it up and haul it away. The huge machines could easily damage the pipeline, so it's carefully marked with stakes.
I told my husband one evening that I smelled gas, but we had been reassured that they had inspected this line and that there were no leaks.
I was at the accident site until it was finally cleaned up and there was a fence put around the area and secured. And it looked like everything was fine.
Early morning, May the 25th. It's been almost 2 weeks since 7551 East derailed, slamming into San Bernardino. But the cleanup was fast. For more than a week, the trains and the fuel in a pipeline below have been running smoothly. Then, from a clear sky, rain seems to fall. Large sections of the neighborhood are soaked by this peculiar shower. Ruth Green is back in her house when for the second time in a month, she's confronted with a horrifying sight.
To the left of me, as far as I could see up, down, or side to side, was nothing but a big wall of fire. I got to the front door, neighbors were screaming, "Get out, get out." I ran for my life.
Once again, the fire department responds to a major disaster on Duffy Street.
As we're getting the call and getting on the rig and opening the door, there was no doubt in my mind what that was. You could see a huge column of smoke and flame, and I knew immediately it had to be the pipeline.
A tower of smoke and flame reaches more than 100 meters into the sky.
Initially, when we got in there, we were so close that the plastic lenses on the front of the engine melted. Several of the turn signals, part of the red lights, melted. There is an intense noise coming from this pipeline where it ruptured. It sounded like a jet engine. Deafening is how I would describe it. And we dealt with that all day long.
Local firefighters aren't the only ones called back to the scene.
I got a call to report to the chairman's office. I went down to the chairman's office, notified that the pipeline blew up, and that I should get my team together again.
The area looked more or less like a war zone, where a lot of damage, a lot of fire damage had been done. Houses in the area were incinerated.
Once again, Kalnev, which runs the pipeline, can't shut its emergency valves. Almost 2 million liters of fuel burn for more than 7 hours. By the time the flames are out, 2 people are dead. 3 more are injured. Another 11 houses have been destroyed. The residents of San Bernardino are in shock.
They talked about the fact that one of the people that died, that all they really could find was their shoes that were left in one spot. And that, you know, the mental picture of that, it troubles you quite a bit.
After the fire, it was over for me. I couldn't see myself living in the house anymore. It really scared me just that bad.
What people here will soon learn is that all of the damage, pain, and suffering is the result of a simple, horrifying mistake. A small neighborhood in San Bernardino, California, has been devastated by 2 disasters. In just 13 days, a train derailment and a gas explosion have ripped through the area, killing 6 people. Investigators with the National Transportation Safety Board study both accidents. With the train crash, they focus on black boxes, which were recovered from 3 of the engines.
And that records distance, speed, throttle position, air brake pressures that we tried to figure out what speed the train eventually got to. It exceeded the graph.
The black boxes reveal that 7551 East had probably reached the incredible speed of 177 kilometers per hour before derailing. The speed limit on the curve was just over 60 kilometers an hour. Although the train's brakes had been applied, it continued accelerating. How had the train become so out of control?
Almost all accidents are a chain of events that link together to cause the accident. Of course, any one point, if you'd broken that link, you know, the accident wouldn't have occurred.
Like other freight trains, 7551 East has 2 different systems to slow it down: dynamic brakes and air brakes. Air brakes push a block against the wheels of each freight car. The greater the pressure applied to the block, the slower the train goes. Investigators learned that the air brakes were working properly as the train started down the hill. As the train sped up, though, engineer Frank Holland maintained pressure on the air brakes. The heat created by the brakes became so intense that they melted. By the time of the crash, they were useless. The team turns its focus to the dynamic brakes. The dynamic brakes harness a magnetic field created by the engine's main generator. They reverse the magnetic field, which slows the axles on the locomotive. There were 4 engines at the front of the train and 2 at the back. Before beginning his trip, engineer Frank Holland knew that his second engine wasn't working at all, and that the dynamic brakes on his 4th engine were only working sporadically. Still, it was more than enough.
And we figured that with the units that we had on the head end and the 2 helpers that they gave us later on, we could do 30 miles an hour down that grade with no problem.
When his train starts down the mountain, Holland has it under control. With the brakes he has, he should be able to hold his speed, but he can't.
Frank, we're at 30.
It should be at 25.
It's creeping.
What the NTSB investigators discover from the black boxes is stunning. The brakes on the 3rd engine at the front of the train didn't work at all as 7551 East gathered speed. During the trip, Holland had even checked with the brakeman in the 3rd engine.
Alan.
Yeah.
What are your dynamics like?
They're revving.
But the black boxes show investigators that even though the dynamic brakes were making the noise they usually make, they weren't working. They weren't helping slow the train down at all. But it gets worse.
Coupled and ready to go.
Roger that.
Of the 2 engines added to the back of the train, one didn't have any braking power either. Lawrence Hill, the engineer at the back, knew it, but he never told Frank Holland.
He didn't communicate to him that he had only one locomotive at a dynamic, the other one was out. The helper engineer thought that the dispatcher would notify the lead engineer.
Calling the helper.
This is the helper.
You got all your dynamics?
Yeah, I'm in full.
So when Holland asks Hill at the back of the train if he has all of his dynamics, Hill says yes. But he only means in the one engine. It's a startling discovery. Holland doesn't have anywhere near the braking power he thinks he does. Investigators studying the black boxes uncover one more secret of the train's terrifying ride down the mountain.
Something must be wrong up there.
When Lawrence Hill pulled the emergency brakes, he actually cancelled out the dynamic brakes. It's a safety feature to keep the wheels from locking and the train from sliding down the tracks. In this case, with the air brakes melting, the dynamic brakes were the only thing holding the train back. Putting the emergency brakes on actually sped the train up.
When the emergency brakes are applied, what happens is you lose your dynamic braking and you've got a runaway train now.
But Pugh is still puzzled. According to all the paperwork, 7551 East was hauling 3.5 million kilos of cargo. At that weight, even with his crippled engines, Holland should have been able to hold his speed going down the mountain. To find out why he couldn't, investigators turned their attention to the days before the accident. "7551 East was pulling a shipment for Lake Minerals. 5 days before the trip began, the company's superintendent drops off the proper paperwork with Thomas Blair, who works for Southern Pacific. The paperwork outlines what's in the shipment and, normally, how much it weighs.
Thanks.
In this case, though, the weight was not filled in. Lake Minerals believed each of the cars was filled to its maximum, 90,000 kilos.
Hey! Hey!
Since that's what the company expected, Lake Minerals didn't think there was any reason to put the number down. But Blair knows that to fill out the proper computer forms, he'll need to have a weight, or the train won't be able to leave the train yard. Blair has been working with Southern Pacific for 17 years. He's seen thousands of freight cars leave his yard. He makes an educated guess that the material in each car on the train weighs 54,000 kilos. But Blair's guess is a tragic miscalculation. Every single freight car on 7551 East is actually carrying 36,000 kilos more material than he estimated. Across 69 cars, it means that the train is actually more than 6 jumbo jets, 2.5 million kilos heavier than anyone thinks it is.
Nobody caught the fact that the weights were way under.
Train orders, train list, and tonnage profile.
From then on, the engineer had a profile of the train that showed 6,100 ton.
I'll be back at 3. Okay.
He operated that way. And it was wrong. It was dramatically wrong. I mean, that was only 2/3 of the weight of that train.
That train was doomed, and we just didn't know it.
Frank Holland was in trouble before his trip began. Even if all of his engines were working, it would have been a difficult trip down the mountain. With all the problems he had, he simply didn't have the power to slow his enormous train down. Crashing into San Bernardino was all but inevitable from the beginning. The wreck of 7551 East was a preventable disaster. Investigators are about to discover that the explosion which followed didn't have to happen either. In May of 1989, twin disasters shatter the town of San Bernardino, California. A train derailment and a gas line explosion kill 6 people and destroy more than a dozen houses. Investigators comb through the ashes to learn how the two events are linked. The pipeline was 2 meters below ground. And in the days after the derailment, CalMev examined it closely. They couldn't find a single dent or crack where the train had broken through the earth. The train crash hadn't seemed to weaken the pipeline. And when gas began pumping through the pipe, there was no loss of pressure, no warning sign of a problem.
They started operating and brought it up to about 1,600 pounds, and all of the pressure readings at various places along the pipeline looked normal.
Since the derailment itself didn't cause the rupture, investigators continue their search. They study the pipeline for clues. Even though the fire burned for hours, the piece of pipe that burst has not been destroyed.
When the pipe opened up, it caused a rupture in the pipe that was sort of what we term as a fish mouth shape. And at the widest area, it was about 4 inches wide, and it was about 2.5 feet long.
Like forensic investigators, the NTSB looks for a telltale fingerprint that will help them discover how the pipe broke. Near the spot where the pipe ruptured, investigators find dents and several deeper gouges. The marks are like wounds on a murder victim. If investigators can find out what caused the marks, they'll discover what caused the pipeline to burst.
We knew that there were deposits of hardened steel left in the gouges. We knew that whatever piece of equipment had damaged the pipe had teeth on it that were hardened steel.
There are several possible suspects. A number of front-end loaders and one large backhoe used during the cleanup all had hardened steel teeth. But Batten can never pinpoint the blame.
Well, the NTSB determined that the damage to the pipeline was done during one of 2 phases, either the cleanup of the train wreckage or it was done during the time in which the trona was being cleaned up after the train wreckage had been removed.
2 mistakes resulted in a pair of disasters for San Bernardino and the death of 6 people. In its final report on the disasters, the NTSB doesn't blame Frank Holland, saying his belief that he had enough braking power to stop the train was perfectly reasonable. Holland still rides the rails, but he's never made the trip down the San Gabriel Mountains again.
Psychologically, I just don't think I could take it. I don't think I could relive that. Every time I went down, I would relive it. And I choose not to do that. It'd just be too painful.
Kalnev, the company that operated the pipeline, was called to account for not checking it after the cleanup operations were completed. Lawsuits against the company were settled out of court.
Kalnev, in hindsight, I think would agree that they should have been much more thorough in their inspection. They got comfortable with what they saw, and they made an assessment without adequate information that it was an undamaged pipeline and okay to operate.
Thomas Blair, who incorrectly filled in the paperwork, was never charged. But after the disaster, Southern Pacific changed its rules so that every freight car without a specified weight was assumed to be carrying its maximum allowable load. Southern Pacific also settled a number of lawsuits out of court. The company no longer exists. It was bought out years after the disaster. Trains continue to run past San Bernardino, but many of the families involved in the disaster moved away.
Trains were still coming down out of Cajon Pass. And so a person couldn't help but go in their mind go to where, what if that this thing could happen again?
Houses aren't allowed beside the tracks anymore. All that's left is an ugly scar of land. There's no monument here to mourn those who died, or to mark the day when disaster came to Duffy Street. Outside one of India's busiest airports, the early evening sky ignites into a fireball.
This cloud just lit up. Felt like you could feel the heat.
Flaming wreckage falls from the sky. It's a horrifying crash.
I realized that the clumps that I saw all around me were either the remnants of the aircraft or dead bodies.
When investigators arrive, they find the twisted remains of 2 passenger jets. 349 people are dead. Vital clues are buried deep underground. Investigators must piece together the day's events.
Saudi 763 will maintain 140.
Kazakh 1907, now reach 150.
How had 2 crews that should have known each other's positions ended up in the world's deadliest mid-air collision? Indira Gandhi International Airport, New Delhi. A gateway to India. November the 12th, 1996.
Busy?
Air traffic controller V.K. Dutta arrives for the late afternoon shift.
There was one supervisory officer. There was one person who was sitting beside me and he was assisting me. And the things were all normal.
But normal at Indira Gandhi doesn't mean calm. This is becoming one of the most congested airports in the world. In 1990, the government of India signed open skies agreements with several different countries. Those pacts have made it easier for foreign airlines to land at Indian airports. Many airlines are taking advantage of the new policy. Air traffic controllers are now handling more traffic than ever.
The open sky policy acted as a catalyst in the air traffic growth. The volume of traffic grew from, I believe, 175 movement a day to around 225 movement a day.
We have to perform during that time. So whether 10 aircraft come on that time or 20 comes, so you have to handle them.
Just past 6 o'clock, Saudi Arabian Airlines Flight 763 takes off into the sunset.
Gear up. Gear up. Clear on left.
Captain Khalid Al-Shabaili powers the Boeing 747 away from the runway. His co-pilot, Nazir Khan, handles all radio communication. There are 289 passengers on board. Many are Indian workers returning to their jobs in the Middle East.
Saudi 763, airborne 03, contact radar 127.9.
While Flight 763 was on the runway, its movements were tracked and directed by an air traffic controller in the airport's tower.
279, good day.
But shortly after the plane takes off, the tower passes the pilots over to approach controller VK Dutta, who's in another room at the airport. Approach controllers at Indira Gandhi guide planes through the airspace beyond the runways. They're in charge of all arriving and departing flights within 110 kilometers.
The approach controller normally is responsible for arrival and departures of the aircraft which are coming in. They are safely and expeditiously, they are brought to the final approach.
Tonight, Dutta is controlling 5 flights. Some of these are leaving the airport, while others are coming in. His task is to keep those planes spaced safely apart, but not so far apart as to cause any delays.
There's a continuous coordination with the tower who handles the ground traffic. So he would tell approach controller that this fellow is ready, and he is to be accommodated between these 2 flights. So that kind of dynamics we were doing at that time.
Saudi 763 approaching flight level 100.
Roger, climb flight level 140.
Clear to climb 140, Saudi 763.
This evening, a United States Air Force cargo plane is coming in for a landing. Even though it's an Air Force jet, this flight is Dutta's responsibility.
I think we probably had 3 or 4 back and forths with the controller where he was verifying our altitude or checking on our altitude, telling us about other traffic in the vicinity.
Saudi 763 approaching 140 for higher.
Saudi Flight 763 reaches its last assigned altitude of 14,000 feet. The pilots request permission to fly higher.
Roger, maintain flight level 140. Stand by for higher.
In order to coordinate incoming and outgoing traffic, Dutta wants the Saudi flight to stop climbing.
Saudi 763 will maintain 140.
Dutta is concerned with another plane, now flying east for a landing at Indira Gandhi Airport. It's a passenger jet operated by Kazakhstan Airlines. The Ilyushin 76 is a massive Russian plane. Originally built for the military, a modified version is now widely used as a commercial airliner. Dutta wants it to pass over top of the Saudi flight before landing. After that, he'll let the Saudis continue their climb.
They were supposed to cross maintaining 1,000 feet of separation.
Kazakh 1907, now reaching 150, 46 miles from Delta Papa November.
Roger, maintain flight level 150. Identify traffic 12 o'clock reciprocal, Saudi Boeing 747.
Dutta doesn't want the Kazakh flight to be surprised to see the Saudi jet. Since planes don't have radar to track other aircraft, they rely on controllers to warn them about other planes nearby.
Maintaining 150, Kazakh 1907, will report. How many miles?
All pilots tuned to the approach control radio frequency are able to hear one another as they communicate with the ground.
How many miles?
8 miles now.
It was strictly visual and trying to pick up on the radios where everyone else is at and what they're up to.
Traffic is at 8 miles, level 140.
Suddenly, a massive explosion shatters the evening's calm.
All at once, out of the right side of the window, right side of the cockpit, this cloud just lit up.
Those missiles?
To my mind's eye, there were missiles kind of corkscrewing, picking up speed was what they looked like, and they looked like they were coming right at us. We actually started veering the aircraft away before it became apparent that they weren't coming at us.
The Saudi Airlines jet spirals towards the ground.
Billy, this is 1815.
1815, say again?
Got on the radio right away, called the controller.
You saw something that looks like a big explosion.
Then it struck to me that something has gone wrong.
On Dutta's radar screen, both the Saudi jet and the Kazakh plane have simply vanished.
When I saw other blips are coming in, so I watched the sweep again. But they were not there at all.
We then heard the controller call for the Saudi Air jet and the Aleutian.
Saudi 763?
With no response. That was obviously very bone-chilling.
Something tragic has happened in the skies near New Delhi's airport. VK Dutta is about to become the target of an investigation into one of the deadliest plane crashes of all time.
Kazakh 1907, report your position.
At New Delhi's airport, a sense of dread is growing. 2 planes have vanished from approach control's radar.
The worst nightmare an air traffic controller has is the Midair police.
Saudi 763?
Together, the 2 missing planes were carrying 349 people.
Kazakh 1907, report position.
I gave 1 or 2 calls to Kazakh or Saudi.
Saudi 763?
I forward how many kids I have, where my wife is, whom I am related to.
US Air Force pilot Captain Tim Place soon confirms the worst.
Billy, this is 1815.
1815.
What did you see? 2 distinct fires on the ground.
2 fires on the ground. Confirm?
Confirm. Confirm.
Roger.
My senior came to me, so I told him the accident happened. I told people who were to do search and rescue that the aircraft have crashed at 40 nautical miles west of Delhi.
2 planes have gone down over Chaki Dadri.
Chaki Dadri is a town 65 kilometers west of New Delhi. Its mustard and grain fields are now burning with the twisted wreckage of 2 ruined airplanes.
All of a sudden, the sky turned a bright red color, and I saw fire and smoke.
One plane started to come towards us. There was fire and parts of the plane were flying everywhere. People were running. The plane's engine broke off and the plane started to spin out of control and fell into the field. I was told that there's been a mid-air collision. Apparently there's a jumbo jet which may be involved, and why don't you just head out? There was this adrenaline rush in that sense. I was very new in the business, and I knew I had to get that story.
Vishnu Som is assigned to report on the crash for New Delhi television. He arrives in the darkness of night a few hours after the crash.
We parked our vehicle on the side of the road, and it was, there was a fair bit of moonlight.
He and his cameraman are one of the first media crews to arrive on the scene.
Hey, turn off the light. Don't want to attract attention. Police have likely cordoned off the area.
I stepped onto the field, and I thought it was a fallow field. Nothing was growing over there because it was just sand. Because it was dark and our only visual reference was the moonlight, we just sort of kept going. And then I remember seeing clumps around me, just these little piles on all sides. And because there wasn't enough light, I didn't know what exactly it was. And then I stopped because I said, something's terribly wrong over here.
Turn on your light. Turn on your light.
I realized that the clumps that I saw all around me were either the remnants of the aircraft or dead bodies. There was a tree just maybe 15 feet away from me. To my right, there was this burnt corpse on that tree, and that's an image which comes back and continues to haunt me even after so many years.
As night turns to day, hope of finding any survivors fades. None of the passengers aboard either plane has survived. 349 people are dead. It's the worst mid-air collision of all time. News of the crash spreads around the world.
What remains clear is that there was more than one set of factors that might have resulted in the collision.
We have 2 very separate wreckage fields.
Captain KPS Nair is one of the first investigators on the scene.
I was aghast, horrified. I can't explain it because I had not seen anything like that before. It is something which I can't explain.
The Kazakh flight and the Saudi Airlines jet have fallen 7 kilometers from each other. Investigators have 2 separate crash sites to examine, but they know one cause will explain both accidents.
It's unlike a single aircraft falling somewhere. 2 large-bodied aircraft colliding each other in the sky. There are different causes.
How had 2 planes that were supposed to be 1,000 feet apart collided? Investigators consider 3 possibilities. An error on the part of the air traffic controller, an error by one of the crews, or the failure of an instrument on one of the planes. They hope the mangled wreckage will hold the clues they need. Their first priority is to find the black boxes from both planes. They record cockpit conversations along with critical data about the flight, like its altitude, speed, and heading. Although fire has ravaged the wreck sites, the black boxes from both planes are found on the first day of the investigation. But for the moment, they hold their secrets. It will take several months for experts to extract data from the recorders. In the meantime, investigators focus on conversations between the two planes and the air traffic controller.
In this particular case, we had the evidence of the ATC transcript.
Without onboard radar, the planes around Delhi's airport rely on air traffic controllers to guide them. VK Dutta comes under enormous pressure. Did he make mistakes that caused the worst mid-air collision ever?
Those times were bad. These media people, they crowd foul. So I told them that, there's no fault of mine.
Hi, I'm VK Dutta. I'm sorry to keep you waiting.
Have a seat.
Investigators want to know everything that Dutta did on the night of the crash.
Was traffic heavy?
Evenings are always busy.
Dutta's radar doesn't track a plane's altitude. Instead, controllers in New Delhi write a plane's last reported position on a strip of paper. The strips are continually updated. It's the only way for controllers to keep track of the altitude of the planes under their control.
Level information is not there, so level has to be confirmed by the pilot.
Kazakh 1907. Now reaching 150.
Air traffic controllers can only know a plane's altitude when the pilots report it.
Are these your notes?
Yes, sir. This is the Kazakh one, and this is the Saudi one.
Investigators learned that Dutta was in charge of 5 flights at the time of the accident, and that the Saudi and Kazakh flights were flying in opposite directions of the same aerial pathway. The area that Dutta manages is divided into a network of air corridors. Controllers use them to channel flights in and out of the airport. But many of the corridors are used for military flights. In fact, even at such a busy airport, there's only one main corridor for commercial planes. In cases like this, there are strict rules he has to follow.
Between two aircraft, the requirements specify a vertical minimum separation of 1,000 feet.
When aircraft fly through the sky, they leave turbulence in their wake, like boats on the water. It can affect the planes around them. Air traffic controllers deal with this by keeping planes at different altitudes.
Roger, maintain flight level 140, stand by for higher.
Dutta was supposed to ensure that the two planes were 1,000 feet apart as they approached each other. He planned to do what he'd done many times before, have the incoming plane pass 1,000 feet over top of the outbound plane. It was a routine procedure, but somehow the two planes had ended up on a collision course. One of the two planes was not where it should have been. Investigators wonder if Dutta made a mistake that led to the horrific crash. Poring through the ATC transcripts, investigators quickly learned that Dutta had given the two planes the proper directions. But since his radar doesn't display altitude, there was no way for him to tell if the planes followed those instructions. Investigators are so convinced that Dutta did nothing wrong that 3 days after the crash, he's back on duty.
Then my family and other people heard this. There was a little sigh of relief that, our guy is safe.
Investigators return to the crash site. They are hoping to recover certain instruments from the two aircraft. Perhaps a mechanical failure had led one of the planes off course.
Normally, the altimeter would have stopped at that point where the accident took place. And we wanted to know what altitude they were registering at the time of the accident.
But the Saudi cockpit has plunged deep into the ground. The accident investigation becomes an excavation.
The Saudi's nose portion was well below the earth. It was about 10 to 12 meters below. The end of the nose had gone that far below. Machines had to be brought in, excavators, to dig up and lift the cockpit of the Saudi aircraft.
The altimeters of the Kazakh flight are easier to find. That plane didn't crash nose first. There's some chance there are clues about its exact altitude at the time of the accident. When they're pulled from the wreckage, investigators discover that there is indeed something strange about the altimeters. Both the captain and the co-pilot have an altimeter in front of them, but in this case, they do not have the same reading.
There was a difference between the two by about 300 feet.
Strange.
Perhaps the conflicting altimeters had led the crew off course. But the difference in readings may simply have been caused by the force of the crash. At this point, investigators don't know.
Mostly there and there, as close as you can get it.
Investigators need to discover which of the two planes was at the wrong altitude. They explore other evidence. The pattern of the damage on the two planes may help answer a critical question.
What was the relative angle between the two aircraft at the time of their contact?
Most of the pieces from the two planes are kilometers apart, but a large section of the tail from the Saudi aircraft is found near the beginning of the debris field. This suggests it was one of the first pieces to come off that plane.
The significant points of contact in this particular accident in the air was between the tail end of the IL-76 and the wing portion of the Boeing 747 of Saudi Air.
The tail of the Kazakh plane appears to have pierced through the left wing of the Saudi jet. If that's the case, the Kazakh flight hadn't been above the Saudi jet when they collided, as air traffic controllers thought. It must have been below it. It's a puzzling discovery that adds to the mystery. Investigators still don't know which plane was in the wrong airspace. What they do know is that once the two planes hit, there was no hope for either crew. After hitting the other plane's wing, the Kazakh plane's tail tore through the horizontal stabilizer at the rear of the Saudi 747. 5.5 meters of it is torn off. Without it, the Saudi crew can't control their plane.
The result is the aircraft goes into uncontrollable spiral. And in this particular case, if I would say both the aircraft had gone into that situation.
What they've found in the wreckage of the two jets frustrates the investigators. They now understand how the planes collided, but they still don't know why they were at the same altitude, or in fact, what altitude they collided at. How had the Kazakh jet, which was supposed to be above the Saudi flight, ended up below it? Almost 2 weeks after the accident, Captain Ashok Verma joins investigators at the scene.
By that time, the operations for digging the Saudi cockpit had been completed. Whatever equipment was recoverable had been recovered.
Like the rest of the evidence uncovered so far, the instruments from the Saudi plane don't help explain what happened. The force of the crash has completely destroyed them.
I can't find anything. Too much damage.
I agree. Look at this.
We could hardly find any useful material.
With the disappointing discovery, investigators are forced to move on. They've learned all they can at the crash site. The case now depends on what they can find out from the black boxes. Investigators hope that somewhere on the cockpit recordings or buried in the flight data are the clues they need. Where were the planes when they collided? And how had they ended up on a deadly collision course?
Get to the 150th
It's been 3 months since the mid-air collision of 2 passenger jets near New Delhi. Investigators have been frustrated by a lack of conclusive evidence. They hope the plane's black boxes will help them solve the case. In order to avoid any suggestion of bias, the boxes from the Saudi flight are being analyzed in England. Technicians from the Air Accidents Investigation Branch try to extract valuable data.
The neutrality of state where the recorders are handled was an essential thing.
Each plane was equipped with 2 black boxes, a flight data recorder and a cockpit voice recorder. The flight data recorder contains information on dozens of aspects of a plane's performance. Among them, the altitude, the airspeed, and the changes pilots make to the flight controls. The cockpit voice recorder picks up all the conversations in the cockpit.
279, good day.
As investigators try to learn more about the collision near New Delhi, they use the information stored on the black boxes to make a chronology of events. Peter Shepherd is head of the recorder section of the Air Accidents Investigation Branch. He'll work backwards from the moment of impact.
The point of collision is reasonably well defined by rapid changes in parameters on each aircraft. If we make that our time zero point, we can then relate that to the individual times and build up a common time base.
First, Shepherd and his team concentrate on the Saudi 747.
Saudi 763 approaching 140 for higher.
Roger, maintain flight level 140. Stand by for higher.
Saudi 763 will maintain 140.
The CVR reveals that the Saudi pilots received clear instructions about their altitude and seem to have understood them. After being told to hold at 14,000 feet, there was no discussion of climbing to a higher altitude, which would have taken them into the path of the Kazakh flight. Next, Shepherd looks at the flight data recorder to confirm that the Saudi flight actually followed the instructions it was given.
The recorder from the Saudi flight showed us that the altitude had been normal during climb out.
The Saudi pilots leveled off at 14,108 feet, well within their safe corridor.
It had leveled at its assigned altitude of 14,000 feet and continued to fly level.
The Saudi pilots followed the ATC instructions meticulously, which is borne out by their confirmatory calls back to the ATC.
Air traffic controllers wanted the 2 planes separated by 1,000 feet and wanted the Saudi plane to fly below the Kazakh jet. If the Saudi pilots did nothing unusual, suspicion is growing that somehow it was the Kazakh plane that was in the wrong place. Alarmingly, when investigators examine the information from the Kazakh jet's flight data recorder, they discover that it descended far below the 15,000 feet it was supposed to stay at. Moments before the collision, the Kazakh plane is at 14,100 feet, almost 1,000 feet lower than its assigned altitude and less than 10 feet below the Saudi flight. It then powered directly into the Saudi jet.
The Kazakh crew had not stopped descending at the altitude they were cleared to, that was 15,000 feet.
But why had the Kazakh flight dropped so badly off course?
Kazakh 1907, report position.
Kazakhstan Airlines presents one theory for their plane's dramatic loss of altitude.
The Kazakhstan defense mainly relied on presence of turbulence.
Perhaps a sudden burst of turbulence had forced the plane lower. The data recorder of the Kazakh flight does seem to indicate that the crew had a bumpy ride. It shows 2 distinct and sudden drops of more than 400 feet. The airline claims both of these drops were caused by turbulence. But Peter Shepard isn't so sure.
When we saw the jumps of 250, 500 feet, our initial response was that these can't be right. I mean, it was the rate at which they changed was beyond that an aircraft could actually perform.
What else could cause the plane to drop so quickly, or at least seem to drop so quickly? Shepard searches for an explanation.
We tried to resolve the inaccuracies in the Kazakh recording by looking at the other parameters that were recorded and trying to derive altitude using these other recordings.
It's intricate math. By using information including the speed and rate of descent from the flight data recorder, Shepard determines that the plane was on a steady downward approach. The reason for the apparent sharp drops is simple. Shepard learns that the sensor that sends altitude information to the flight data recorder was faulty. It would stick and temporarily stop sending information. When it got unstuck, it would wrongly appear as though the plane had lost considerable altitude.
It's as if there was a bit of glue on one area and it stuck in that. And eventually the altitude changed so much, the force on it made it jump again, and it stuck there for a little while.
Investigators can now conclusively dismiss turbulence as a factor in the collision.
So there's no sudden descent?
Scanning maintenance records, investigators also discover that there was no problem with the Kazakh plane's altimeters. They conclude that the difference found in the cockpit instruments was a result of the crash. It didn't cause it. To understand why the Kazakh plane kept descending after it was told to hold, investigators turn to the cockpit voice recorder. It begins long before the crash itself. Initially, there are no hints that anything is wrong.
Kazakh 1907, report level passing.
Passing 240, Kazakh 1907.
Because the Ilyushin 76 is a modified military plane, it has another unusual feature, a position for a radio operator in the cockpit. Igor Rep mans that position and handles all communications for the Kazakh flight.
Roger, over to Delhi approach 127.9.
127.9, bye-bye, Kazakh 1907.
As the aircraft nears the airport, Rep gets in touch with approach controller Dutta.
Delhi approach, good evening. Kazakh 1907. Passing 230 to 180.
I told Kazakh to descend and maintain flight level 150. That is 15,000 feet.
Roger, Kazakh 1907. Descend, flight level 150. Report reaching.
1,000 feet vertical separation is sufficient, and that was granted to the two aircraft.
Kazakh 1907, now reach 150.
The Kazakhstan radio operator had at one time stated reaching flight level 150.
It's just 1 minute before the impact. And at this point, the Kazakh plane appears to be right where it's supposed to be, 1,000 feet higher than the Saudi plane. But investigators know that instead of leveling off, the plane continued to descend.
This is where the trouble starts.
As investigators compare the flight data information to the cockpit voice, they notice something disturbing.
Kazakh 1907, now reach 150.
When Rep calls out that they've descended to 15,000 feet, he's actually over 1,000 feet higher than he thinks he is. Investigators wonder how he could make such an enormous mistake. Why would he say he was at 15,000 feet, when in fact he was at 16,000? They consider the layout of the cockpit.
A radio operator does not have his independent altimeter. There are two metric altimeters fitted in front of, one each in front of the pilots. With some effort, the radio operator could also see this.
Whatever the reason, Rep is mistaken about his plane's height, and he's the only one in contact with the ground. Despite being told to remain at 15,000 feet, the plane continues to descend. As it does, Dutta issues a warning to the Kazakh pilots.
Identified traffic, 12 o'clock reciprocal, Saudi Boeing 747 and 10 miles. Likely to cross in another 5 miles. Report if in sight.
He tells them to watch out for the Saudi flight, but the Kazakh jet just keeps flying lower.
Ahead. Ahead.
Just before the crash, Igor Rep seems to have recognized that the plane is now flying dangerously low. But his warning doesn't come in time.
Keep the 150. Do not descend. Accelerate, Sanyo.
The cockpit voice recorder proves what investigators found in the flight data. At the time of the crash, the Kazakh jet was trying desperately to get back on course.
Get to the 150 and press at the 140. Stop the one!
But investigators are still puzzled. Why had the Kazakh plane kept descending?
After ruling out controller's error, ruling out the mechanical failure, do you have to go further into details of human behavior during the operation of a flight?
Kazakhstan is one of several now independent republics that used to be part of the Soviet Union. The national airline has a reputation at Indira Gandhi Airport.
There was always a sense that, these were small fly-by-night operators essentially doing the charter business, and they didn't necessarily follow the conventions of modern Western aviation.
We examined their background of knowledge of English language. The crew in the Soviet states, they pass English examination, but they're not fluent in spoken English.
Verma now listens more closely to the cockpit voice recorder, looking for an indication that the crew misunderstood their instructions. Had a language barrier caused the crash?
How many miles?
Traffic is at 8 miles, level 140.
Did the Kazakh pilots confuse their own altitude with that allocated to the Saudi aircraft?
Report, 8 miles.
Verma finds that members of this crew weren't communicating clearly with each other. Igor Rep was responsible for communication with the ground, but there's no indication that the pilot and co-pilot were listening to his instructions.
Switch on, engine inlet heating.
While the rest of the crew was busy discussing arrival procedures, Rep alone seemed to be occupied with their altitude.
Now looking, 1907.
It is a usual practice that the briefing for the arrival is completed before start of descent, so that all crew can pay full attention to the radio.
While the radio operator appears to have understood that the Saudi plane was at 14,000 feet, investigators believe the co-pilot thought that he was cleared to 14,000 feet and continued his descent.
Hold the level. What level were we given?
When the pilot does respond, he seems confused.
I think pilots did not pay that much attention and relied too much on the radio operator and to navigate the aircraft during this critical phase.
The decision to increase power and stop descending ends in tragedy.
Keep the 150. Do not descend. Accelerate, Sanyo. Get to the 150 and press at the 140. Stop the one!
The final report points a finger squarely at the crew of the Kazakh plane. In the wrong place at the wrong time. A simple misunderstanding led to the deaths of 349 people.
The investigation concluded that the primary cause of this Midair collision was non-adherence to the authorized altitude allocated to the Kazakhstan aircraft.
Investigators are confident they know what caused the worst mid-air collision in aviation history. But there are steps they want the industry to take to help make Indira Gandhi Airport safer. What they find is that the technology that could have prevented this accident was already at the airport.
Saudi 763.
Investigators have determined that poor cockpit communication and a simple misunderstanding caused a devastating accident which killed almost 350 people. But technology existed that could have helped avoid this accident. Systems that would have helped both the pilots in the air and the controllers on the ground. Investigators are especially critical of the radar that was being used in New Delhi.
Air traffic controllers did rely on fairly outdated technology at that stage. There wasn't any secondary radar available at Delhi Airport. There was only an old primary radar.
Primary radar sends out radio signals to locate airplanes in the sky. The signal bounces off the plane and back to a dish on the ground. It reads a plane's position, but not its altitude.
The primary radar gives you a 2D picture.
Secondary radar works differently. A transponder aboard an aircraft sends a message to the ground with key information about the flight, including its altitude.
Saudi 763 approaching flight level 100.
Roger, climb, flight level 140.
On the day of the collision, approach controller VK Dutta could only rely on what the crews told him about their aircraft's altitudes.
That's at 1907. Now reach 150.
The Kazakh radio operator said that they were flying at 15,000 feet, but Dutta had no way to confirm that. If he had known the Kazakh flight's actual altitude, he could have diverted the Saudi flight from its path.
That is the 3D picture. So you have some time to react to it. You can take the aircraft away.
At the time of the accident, India had ordered a $118 million air traffic control system with secondary radar and more sophisticated communications and navigational equipment. The system had originally been scheduled to be installed 2 weeks before the accident. But on the day of the crash, the system hadn't even been unpacked.
Secondary radar is an advancement on the primary radar. And in this particular case also, by getting the altitude information, it could have been possible that the accident of this nature could have been avoided.
In the year following the accident, there would be 3 near misses near Indira Gandhi Airport. It would take more than 2 years for the secondary radar system to be installed. Today, controllers at Indira Gandhi International Airport see an airplane's flight number, altitude, and heading. It's far more information than controller VK Dutta had available to him on the day of the accident. Experts believe another piece of technology could have helped prevent the collision: TCAS.
TCAS equipment generates caution and warnings for the crew. It allows them time to react, draws their attention to the situation around, and it looks into the vertical separation.
TCAS is a collision avoidance system that can be installed on board airliners. In many countries, the technology is mandatory. It alerts pilots when other flights are coming too close. The system also automatically tells them what evasive action they should take. Neither plane was equipped with TCAS. The Indian Airports Authority has also made the airport safer by redesigning the air corridors coming and going from the runways. At the time of the collision, there was one main air corridor for commercial planes landing and taking off from Indira Gandhi International Airport. With the increase in air traffic, that single corridor was becoming too crowded. In the wake of the accident, more air corridors were opened for commercial flights.
In general, aviation safety standards has improved. The concern for the safety has improved.
Out-of-date technology and poor communication led to this crash. But like almost every aviation accident, it was a chain of seemingly minor events that ended in disaster.
In retrospect, those were some very unlucky people to meet in the sky that night. You know, it's a 1 in a million chance for that to happen. Certainly there were other things that could have helped: radar, collision avoidance systems, and I think we continue to make advances there. I don't worry about flying. Certainly, you know, destiny, I don't know. It was glad we weren't 5 minutes in front of where we were at, that's for sure.
VK Dutta went on to have a long career as an air traffic controller. Today, he works at a college training young controllers.
So I'm chief instructor there. So I'm training ATCUs. I'm addicted to my job. I love it. I really love it.
Dutta, who was initially suspected of having caused the crash, helped implement the changes to make New Delhi's airports safer. His efforts have paid off. The airport now handles 20 million passengers a year. Since the new radar system was installed and the new corridors opened, there hasn't been a fatal accident at this airport.